You know, whether you shot at anyone or not, it's pretty hard to say. Just spraying bullets into the jungle and, you know, just letting off mines and, yeah, and just wait till day. You know, usually didn't wait till daylight and for someone to go and have a look around and see what's happened. Yeah, we had a good time over there. Then we just, you know, flew back into, which is really scary. You go from a battle zone, you know, where you're full on alert into, you know, mixing with people, real people. Then, you know, 7 days out, then you're flown back straight into it again. It's, yeah. Yeah, I was born in Newcastle at Waratah on 21st 7th 1948.
And can you tell us about your time in the National Service in Vietnam, your movements through that period?
Yeah, I was called up for Nashos at the end of, beginning of 69, and eventually went in on the 7th of July 1969, then went overseas in 70, came home in 71 with it, yeah, 2 years with National Service.
And so when you say you went overseas, you went to Vietnam?
Yeah, I went to Vietnam 14th May 1970 and came home on the 19th of May 1971. 6 days longer than what we should have been there.
Can you give us just walk us through briefly the different places that you went to in Vietnam?
Yeah, we transferred. We flew into Saigon to start with, and that's where you first start. Then transported there to Vung Tau. Then I was stationed at actually Nui Dat Forward Support Base, and with A Squadron 3rd Cav Regiment as what we call the RAEME Mechanic attached to the squadron with it.
And you stayed there?
Yeah, I stayed there the full,
yeah,
pretty well the whole time between there and, you know, we'd have leave at Vung Tau, or we'd do operations, which would send us out in the field and keep us out, you know, out of base for 6 weeks at a time, or a bit longer sometimes. And you'd come back into the DAT again and work.
What kind of work would you do when you?
Mostly you did, you know, we serviced personnel carriers, you know, replace motors if they were blown up, stuff like that, and just transmission. But mainly, you know, the Army had a regimented way of doing things, which was A service, B service, C services on their vehicles, and you followed that plan, know what you were doing, and you know, you know, we had 13 mechanics actually work in the unit. Probably all up, I think it was about 25 guys. You know, they're all RAEME attached to the Cav squadron with it. You know, we had armourers, radio mechanics, welders, store persons, you know, storemen and stuff like that for stores, plus guys that just work on the tanks and, you know, on the carriers themselves, and a couple of sergeants and a captain to keep you all in line, or try to. With it.
And when you went out, when you went out outside of the base, what would you actually be doing?
Yeah, we'd send normally, if they had, say, we'd send out probably 20 carriers on operations, and we'd had our own what we call fitters tracks, which were equipped with, you know, all our tools and, you know, spares to fix in the field, plus 2 mechanics. They'd go with it and operate with the squadron, and you'd spend your, you know, maybe 6 weeks out doing ambushes with them, or, you know, troop operations and stuff like that. And if one of them broke down while you're out there, so you'd try and repair it on the job. You know, if you couldn't get it repaired, you'd either fly in small blokes or get it transported back to base with it. But yeah, but mainly just operated with the squadron with it. Yeah.
The personnel carriers that you're working with, was there just a standard model at that stage in the Army? Yeah,
they were. Just basically, you know, still doing development on them. Just a standard, you know, made in America, M113As, I think the correct name with them. They weighed about 12 tonne with them. They were top speed, you know, around 45 mile an hour, or a bit better. Some would if you jigged the governors on them. They'd carry, most of the ones that carry twin 30 cal machine guns on them. They also fitted out with mortar tracks as a mortar And usually you had a driver and a crew commander, and usually one offsider on some of them, and then you'd pick up infantry guys and carry them. They'd either sit in or inside them or on the outsides, but they affectionately call them the Green Cab Company over there, because green, get a taxi anywhere, give the grunts a ride if they want to go somewhere, and which infantry guys are affectionately known as a grunt. You call them. No, they were a good thing to work on. They were good fun. We had 3 of our own fitters tracks, which were all fitted out. They were a bit heavier, but they were fitted out with a high-hab crane and oxy gear, and you'd carry all your tools and a array of spare parts inside them, and they were fitted with 50 cal machine guns on them. And normally, if they sent the troop out, of 20 or 30 carriers, you'd send one personnel carrier, one of ours, with them. And two mechanics, one as a crew commander and one as the driver. And then you just work on them in the field if something went wrong. Just minor problems. Anything major, you try and ship them back out. If one hit a landmine while we're out there, well, if it was only minor damage, we'd repair it on the spot and get the parts flown in if we needed to with it. And if it was too big, major repair, blown an engine or something, well, we'd get it trucked out of there, get a truck in and we'd ship it out or tow it out. Sometimes we'd tow it back to where you could safely get it accessed a bit better with it.
Officially, how many grunts were you meant to be able to fit inside?
You get probably 8 to 10 in them. Stack them in there.
It's the idea is that they stand, or is there any seating?
No, there's seating along the seats along the sides of them. But most of the time they'd sit up on the top. That really just perch up on the top of the carriers and that.
Were there any particular handles or anything for that?
No,
purpose,
just
or
sit
you
on.
Just improvise.
Yeah, just improvise. Just sit on top of the ammunition boxes or whatever else was up there with it. So it's like riding around on a pile of high explosives sometimes with it. A lot of times we just move them there. We'd also move the SAS guys and that special service guys. We'd do operations with them sometimes, and we'd move them around too. And but then you'd only have you might have 10 or 15 carriers, but you'd probably only have 8 or 10 SAS guys, and they'd be scattered between all the different carriers, and they'd just jump off when they felt like it, and they'd get back on the same way. They'd just climb back on again when they felt like it. Frighten the shit out of you. They were pretty good.
We'll talk a bit more about those mystery men in a little while. And so, in the driving compartment, how many abreast could you sit?
No, you only sat one in the driver's seat, and you steered it with a set of steering tillers. They didn't have a steering wheel or anything like that. Just had an accelerator, and they were automatic, so you just auto shift in them and used to steer them by just pulling the steering tiller left or right, and it'd lock the wheels up and make it turn whichever way. They took a bit of skill to drive them, actually. You do a lot of training, and because you had to learn to drive them, follow them one behind the other exactly, because of landmines. If you got a bit off course and triggered a landmine, well, if you were the 5th carrier back and you ran over a landmine, well, you shouldn't. Your driver's normally at error, so it's always the first guy that's going to get it. But most of the time, you learn to drive them so they sit spot on behind each other, especially going down the dirt roads and that, so you can track each other pretty well. So there's only one set of pads being laid down all the time. So it takes a little bit of skill to do that, really.
And what was the thinking behind having levers rather than a steering wheel?
I think it's just the way they built the track system on them. I'm not sure what the setup was that. They've been around in America for, the Yanks have had them for quite a few years with them. They put heavier body armour on them over in the Australians did, because of the landmines are blowing them up and penetrating the hull. So there was a fitment went through there, and it started just as I got there, fitting this thicker body armour underneath the bottom of the plate, to try and stop the landmine damage with them. And also we're having a lot of trouble with the drivers and that breaking their left ankle all the time from the landmine explosions, and so we put a collapsible, made up collapsible footrest for them so it wouldn't collapse as much. It'd take a bit more out of it. But we found that was a bit of a common injury, broken left foot, and that's what it was. But then after a while we started looking into it a bit better, and it was actually from the guys not putting their foot on the footrest at all. They were sitting up on the top of the sponson alongside them and resting their arm on it to drive it, and so I was getting full brunt of the blast, and it'd break a leg or break a kneecap. So just a concussion of them.
And from a wheel point of view, did they have a combination of wheels and tracks?
Yeah,
or?
they had wheels and tracks and torsion bar suspension on them. And it was quite common for them to throw a track off. Then you'd have to put it, go to the trouble of getting back on, or if they hit a landmine, they'd blow the track off. And you'd same thing, you'd have replacement tracks there to put on, and if they lost a road wheel, the same, we'd carry replacement road wheels, and we'd just repair them on the spot. They were pretty easy to do, so you'd redo them. And you'd do a torsion bar. If you break a torsion bar, you could change them on the spot as well. But yeah, used to carry quite a few torsion bars with us because it was one of the things they used to break all the time. They had 6 road wheels, I think, down either side. Should remember things like that, shouldn't I? Something like that.
How many torsion bars would you be
One on
carrying?
each. Oh, we used to carry 4 torsion bars, and each nearly carry another one anyway. Yeah, we actually ran out of torsion bars at one stage of the game, and went up to the Yank base up near Saigon, and bought a lot of them off the Yanks. Went through their carriers because they used to just, where we'd repair all ours, they used to just trash them and get another one. And they had this big yard full of them, and yeah, bought stacks of them and a whole heap of gear for a couple of cartons of beer. Horse trading. But you couldn't get them through the Australian supplies. It's one of those things.
Can you think of any other technical specs about the vehicle that we haven't touched on yet that might be relevant or interesting?
Yeah, they were Allison, supercharged Allison. Sorry, they were a GM motor in them with supercharged, and they ran an Allison 3-speed auto transmission that on them. And some of them we used to, or the ones that we had, because they're a little bit heavier, we used to spike the governors on them and get them going a bit harder, so you could drive them a bit quicker and keep up with the guys on the road, run along a lot better. But yeah, they were torsion bar suspension. They weighed 12 tonne, which is pretty good. They will float. You could actually swim them, and if you're really careful with them. But they have sunk a few over the years in the rivers and stuff like that. They take a hit from an ordinary rifle bullet and wouldn't penetrate them. You punch them into them pretty well with them. But RPG rockets used to play havoc with them. They'd sink them through them and hit the fuel cells in them and make a bit of a mess in there. Or sometimes they'd just get in there and bounce around inside and fragment up inside them, burn a hole through them. And we had one there that took an RPG in through the front and actually split the engine block in half on it. So they hit pretty hard really, and didn't hurt anyone on board except a bruised shoulder for the driver and deafness, which usually goes with an explosion on board a carrier most of the time. Because you issue with driving helmets, but most guys just wear a barrow and a pair of sunglasses anyway. Driver's helmet to sit in the back somewhere out of the way. See the new blokes wearing them, but most of the older blokes there, you'd get rid of them and wear your favourite barrow with your sunnies and your headset over top of them. Yeah.
What sort of an average speed would you manage?
They'd run, 45 mile an hour. Most of the time, probably run them around 40. Unless you were coming home somewhere down the highway, then you'd tend to string them out and get them going pretty well. Ours, I've seen like 58 mile an hour in one actually, which is really clacking along on a set of tracks with it. They were fun to drive with it.
So you became pretty attached to them?
Oh yeah, no, they're good machines.
You mentioned that apart from your SLR, you were issued with a sidearm that you would be using eventually when you got to Vietnam. What was the sidearm?
Yeah, I had 9mm. Brownie that we used to. Oh, well, mainly because we worked so much without a weapon near us, and that we sidearm with just a under holster and used to underarm holster it. So you always had a weapon with you. And few of us carried them, not all of us, but some guys carried them all. And it just made it a bit easy, especially if you jumped out of your carrier sometimes, and say if you're going back, so you always had a bit of protection with you with it.
Did you tend to have yours on most of the time? When
we're out in the bush, not around the Nuidat, but we never did. But out in the bush working in the field, I always carried it with me pretty well. A couple of things you'd attach to, I suppose.
And did they brief you into more of the specifics of the political situation behind the conflict, the state of the war at that point, anything like that?
No, not that I can recall at all. money, which you probably read about later. Yeah, I'm probably more aware of it now, and than the political side than what I was back then. And I don't think we'd had anything on that. It was mainly just tactics and staying alive over there. More than anything.
Did the regulars like to think that they were superior to you blokes?
No, not really. Most of our guys were pretty good. We got on pretty well with each other, really. But, well, it was only a small unit anyway. There's maximum probably 25, 30 blokes. 13 mechanics, and so you really had to get on with each other. And you're living with each other pretty well all the time, so there wasn't too much privacy as far as, after hours and stuff like that. So, a little cubicle to sleep in, listen to the same music together, drink together. You sort of were hanging around all the time, so you couldn't have too many personal conflicts with anyone, really.
So if 13 of the group were mechanics,
yep.
What was the rest of the group comprised of?
Yeah, we had mechanics, then we had 2 armourers, and they used to look after all the weapons on all the carriers. They'd any breakdowns or anything like that, or any malfunctions, they'd strip them and check them. And all your personal weapons, they'd, if you couldn't fix it, they'd repair them and do mods to them and stuff like that. Then we had radio technicians that used to keep all the radios operating, and the same thing, they were always flat out. They were called Faradays, actually. That was their nickname for those guys. And had stores person. You had 2 people in the storeroom, and they'd, if you're working on a carrier, you had a big job sheet, and you'd, write out a list of parts you wanted, and you'd take it to the store and try and get all the parts if you could get them. And they were all, like booked out against the carrier. It was all costed out still, what it costs each vehicle to be over there. It just ran like a normal garage. We'd run something like 1,500 man hours a month working, and all that had to be tallied, like the hours you were working and stuff like that still had to be written down. And that's what it was, just ran like a big workshop, really. They do that, storemen, a couple of welders, guys that specialise in aluminium welding and whatever else, general welding. And then you'd have you had your CO that was in charge of your lot, then a senior ASM, which then a sergeant under that. Then from then on down, just corporals, lance corporals, and guys to run, general day-to-day running of the show. And we were separate to the Cav squadron itself. They had their own administration and stuff like that, and we sort of just walk across the road to their quarters, sort of mess and stuff like that. But we actually camped separate to the Cav squadron itself with it.
Did the mechanics have a nickname?
Bluebells were called. If you ever had a problem, we had 3 carriers, 98 Alpha, 9 or 8, 98 Alpha, 98 Bravo, and they just call you up, Bluebells wanted such and such a situation. Then they'd use your, find out who was on it and just use a hyperdown. Mine was just Mike Tango. If they were after you. And very rarely use guys' names, I'm always nicknames or whatever, and that with it. They were just known as the 908 organisation. That was their call signs with them.
What's the origin of Bluebells as a nickname?
I don't know. I belong to the RAEME Association, and I still haven't found out where it come from. Yeah, and I probably have read about it, but I just can't even recall it. Yeah, because the association, this newsletter that comes out in it, it's a lot of old guys in it, and I don't know where it come from. Just a nickname from somewhere, I suppose. But stuck with it, I'd say it's probably been passed down from one war to the next by the sound of it. With it.
And did you get a nickname yourself?
No, it's just always just my name, Mike. I've never had a nickname really. It's quite surprising all my life. I've just never been a blue or a curly or nothing like that. Really. Just always been just called that.
And it was standard practice that the mechanics were also the drivers of the vehicle?
Yeah, yep.
There was no such thing as just a driver?
No.
You had to be both?
It had to be both. When you first got into the country, usually they give you about 3 weeks orientation in the camp, like working there. And the first operation that's going, you send the new guy out. And I, like for instance myself, we were in there only about 2 weeks and they had an operation going, so they slam me in the carrier, and you relearn to drive it again, and you have an experienced guy which I had one of the sergeants come with me as the crew commander, and he's also still a mechanic. And so you go out and operate with the troop, usually run second last carrier in the group. They always keep someone else behind you. And away you go and just operate and do as you're told as far as the whole troop goes. And when you do a night ambush or something like that, you split up as, you know, into one of the troops as a group and just operate that way till something goes wrong. Then you become a mechanic. But other than that, you're just another carrier that's there for fire support till something goes wrong. And our first night that we were out, and the first ambush we ever did there, the ambush went off.
What were your impressions when you touched down there?
Oh, there's plenty of planes around. All sorts of jets and helicopters, stuff like that. Plenty of that around. And just the Saigon, the city itself, just seeing it from the air and looking at it, just thinking, boy, what a mess it is. Really, just another culture completely, which is never been out of Australia before. So something different.
And could you see a lot of damage around Saigon City?
No, not really. Not till later on when you go up there and have a bit of a look about. But flying over the place you could see a lot of bomb crater, bomb hole, bomb marks in the ground, stuff like that, and with water ditches. But not around the city itself that much. Really, it's just a mess anyway. So, harbour full of boats and a lot of old fishing boats, all that sort of gear and people and different language. Pretty hard to cope with it.
So, getting to Nui Dat and checking that out for the first time, what were your impressions?
Well, we landed at Luscombe actually, and just the barbed wire, everything had barbed wire all the way around it, everywhere. Pretty big shock, I suppose. That this is where we are in the middle of nowhere, and this is home for the next bloody year. Everyone's carrying guns, just that sort of stuff. But still, I'm not really sure actually. It's pretty hard to describe it, but it was. Just trying to think, it was in their wet season or the dry season there. I think it might have been the wet season when we first put in. Still, would have been really green. All the barbed wire, gets all grass all over it, and been pretty green, as far as that goes. And Luscombe Bowl's always, full of the same thing. Got helicopter pad there, and plenty of helicopters and stuff around, and plenty of blokes with guns walking about, and infantry all over the place, and everything's all set up in the rubber trees. All the we're in a rubber plantation where we were camped, and that it's all sort of plenty of that stuff everywhere, which we hadn't seen before with it. No.
And the camp was entirely made up of tents, or were there any huts around?
No, we had a lot of it as tents and sandbags, like a roof and sandbagged halfway up in tents, but we were lucky enough to have big long huts which had tin roofs on them, then actually had walls halfway up, then fly screen the rest of the way. So they're pretty open air, like breezeway type things, and inside them we just had individual like compartments which you'd make your bed, and you had a locker, and you had a desk which you could just screen off if you wanted to, or then put your own stereo gear in it and just set it up as a bit of a, like a private study thing, but still, the mate over next door to you could see straight through, and privacy was just not an issue. It was just one of those, just blokes with it, and that's where you lived.
Did that lack of privacy, was that something hard to get used to?
No, not really. Just well, it's pretty, like your showers and all that were all 4 blokes standing in a row, and same with the loos. We had our toilet block was just 4 loos in a row with a bit of partition down one side of it, and a joke board over there, and a cigarette box there, and a social event.
So you just sit there and chat to your mate
next door. Tell jokes. Just a social occasion to go to the loo, really. Same to go to the showers, because we worked most of the time in shorts and boots, no shirts. You get covered in grease, and you go to the shower, and you always got a mate there to help you scrub the grease off your back, or you do vice versa for him, or it just, I think it's just part of, you just accept it, part of life, and growing up with it.
Did you eventually...
any shy blokes, I think, might have had a problem, but just the way it went, never took any notice or anything. Probably laugh about it a bit now, and you look back at it. Don't drop the soap. It's just, but that was just part of life there. If you want to get clean, you worked hard, and if it rained, you got wet, and you're still working, you got covered in mud, and you'd get filthy sometimes working on these things. And that's what you worked in, just shorts and no shirt most of the time. It was just so hot.
That little desk space that they gave you, did you end up personalising that yourself?
I was lucky enough to have, it's just something you made up. I had a bit of glass on top of mine and had a lot of, photos from home and everything underneath it, and also on your walls. Then I think it's a couple of flags hanging up in it and just bits and pieces like that. Then your own stereo system, like everyone had their own stereo. You'd just go and buy them, go and buy a big flash reel-to-reel tape deck or something like that. And most guys, headphones, you just pop your headphones on and just listen to it yourself. I've got my original speakers and the original stuff still sitting up in the shed. Reel-to-reel tapes for probably about 10 of them. It's 3 or 4 hours a pop with it. But that's all you do. And some blokes, you'd just leave them out unplugged sometimes, just let them play all day. Go in there, just not worry with it. But that was just your space, just a wardrobe, like a tin locker with gear in it, and sleeping on a bed with a mosquito net over it, stop the mozzies from eating you to death.
So did the blokes in your unit go out of their way to give you a warm welcome?
We all got on very well, actually, all the guys. Everyone we work with are good blokes, and a lot of them we still know today. There's no, they try and make you feel welcome, and like teach you the ropes straight up, so you don't fall for all the pitfalls. There's still the same old tricks, but set the beds up so you fall off them, and a few little things like that just to make you feel at home.
All right. You were the new. First of all, what does RAEME stand for?
RAEME.
RAEME, yeah.
Royal Australian Electrical and Mechanical Engineers.
Okay. And the symbol you mentioned there, you have a
special
symbol.
It's a little rearing horse symbol. It is, with it. I don't know where the significance of it. I think it's probably from years back with the horse-drawn guns and stuff like that. And they were part of. I think they were actually part of the artillery at one stage of the game, but I wouldn't like to get quoted on it because someone might stand on my toes. It'd be something like that. It is. I'm sure it is actually. And the horse probably had something to do with that back then. Yeah.
All right. So you were the new RAEME recruit in Vietnam.
Yeah.
What was it like for a new recruit?
For the new bloke, you're shown around a bit to start with. So you orientate yourself to the base, and they drive you around in different areas, and where to go and not to go, and what to expect around the place. You're shown where you're going to sleep, and your gear, and where to draw stores from, and weapons and all that sort of stuff. Pretty well a basic orientation of the group more than anything on the day. And you're just given a toolbox with some tools and stuff in it as well, and there's yours to keep for the duration while you're there, and not many of them actually. It's quite surprising.
What did they give you?
Really basic toolkit, very, very basic stuff, for what work you do, and you tend to live out of that. Quite. That's enough, I suppose. But hammers, ball peen, 1 engineers, and all this. So you sign for all that stuff, and you sign it all back in when you leave. So if you lose any of it, you got to account for it. It's quite amazing. Still, the army the way it is. Just go to the stores and book out another one, or as long as you sign for it, you can have it. You just don't go and take things, everything over there. As long as you sign for it, you can have it. But if you don't sign for it, look out.
Sorry, I'll just ask a quick question about the toolbox. When you first got it and you realised that it was pretty basic, as you said, were you thinking, oh my God, what am I? This is not enough.
Not really. We'd worked on them before and that, and yeah, they're only pretty basic. And you have a workshop there with other bigger tools and things like that. But your basic stuff that you use every day, you just have your own personal tools, and that'd be with you. Compared to like at the moment we've probably got a 2,000 piece toolkit in real life, and over there probably like 50 pieces. To do all the maintenance we need to do is probably about it. Really, it's you can make do what you got, and it was just part of you. You took it everywhere you went, every job you went on, and then if you went in helicopter to fly somewhere, you took your toolbox with you, just grab your gear and away you went.
What about the workshop in?
We didn't have a workshop as such. All we had was a big slab of concrete that was put down on the ground, and also doubled as the basketball court and everything else for after activities, and not undercover, just out in the open. So when it rained, you got wet. When it was sunny, you just got sunburnt. And when it rained, you just work in the mud. And every now and again, we'd had a jeep there with a grader blade, and we used to just scrape all the mud back off it and start work again. Set her up, and away you go with it. Had the stores were all undercover, things like that, and we had undercover sort of morning tea area, afternoon tea. Got to be civilised even in a war zone. An area like that, then a small office, for paperwork sort of stuff. But the same thing, pretty open air. Just a basic window, wooden shutter to start to rain. Just pull the shutter down and block all the moisture from getting into place. And a couple of undercover parks for our carriers themselves, but other than that, you did all your work 99% of the time out in the weather. That's everything.
How did you cope with that humidity?
After a while, humidity, you just learn to live with it. You just perspire a lot, for sure. You used to just work in shorts and boots. Boots, socks, shorts. Hardly anyone ever wore any shirts and that, especially just way you went. And in the wet season, well, if it rained, you just kicked the lid of the toolbox shut so the water didn't get in, and just worked on in the rain and not worried about it. Then when it stopped, you were dry again in no time at all, because just the heat and humidity, and just mud was a bit chaotic, but just scrape it all away again, start again, away you go. It's just part of life over there, really. 6 months of rain and 6 months of hot weather. You just live with it.
And so it was 2 or 3 weeks before you, as a new recruit, that you'd be at base, on base?
We tried, that was the policy over there, try and get new people. As soon as you get there, as soon as you can get them out in the bush, the better, so they know what's going on, out in the field, and just get a feeling for the place. And now, it would have been only 2 or 3 weeks before that we were sent on an operation with it, and you usually send out a senior bloke, someone that's been there a little while, to show like the new guy the ropes, and eventually, you being the new bloke, you start off driving the carrier, and eventually, as time goes on, you graduate to being that senior guy, that you're passing on your experience to the new recruit. That you're the one that's given the orders to make sure that he survives while he's there. So it's just an ongoing process. So, and our whole unit was based on that. You always had guys. There wasn't a whole lot of senior guys. Everyone just progressively moved up the ladder. The more days you were there, the more seniority you got, and it didn't matter too much on rank. If you had some time there, you were sometimes sent to jump in a carrier with a guy that might have only been there 3 weeks, who might have been there 6 months. So you're a senior to him, and you try and pass on your experiences to make him so he can survive over there, and just learn the ropes again and operate in the field. You're the best you can coach them, to help them survive, really. And that's what a lot of it was about. And it's the same with any unit there, really, was done pretty well the same way. That you sort of looked after the new bloke pretty well to get him through his first few weeks in country, so he could orientate himself and didn't get out of line.
So can you tell us about your
first
experience in the bush? Is that what you called it, being in the bush, not in the jungle?
Pretty well the bush. Refer to it more than anything. I think it's just the country in me. The jungle is something like Tarzan's been in, I think. I don't know. To me, it's just bush, and a lot of it is just like bush in Australia. Some of the up north country and that, it's just like being here. And sometimes you could sit and, on your carrier and think, that's where you'd be. It's quite amazing, really. But yeah, we had actually my first night. We did a operation in around Long High Hills, and actually our first night out, what we used to do, they'd go out and they'd already have pre-selected sites where they'd have information where Viet Cong might have been using these trails to walk through or transport ammunition or food supplies. They would have had them staked out early in the piece by the SAS guys, so then they'd get onto the personnel carriers, and we'd get some infantry guys with us, and we'd go out and do an operation in that area. So, and actually the first night that we did an operation with them, we were either fortunate or unfortunate that our ambush actually went off that night. It was contacted and went off, and it's just all happened so quickly, and all over there you actually slept in hammocks inside the vehicles. Just slung a hammock up and slept in, and that was a bit of a novelty as well. So we're trying to adjust to sleeping in that, and in early hours of the morning someone's tripped all the claymore mines and they've just gone off, and it's just a horrendous noise because everything starts going off and bloke starts firing. And I've stood up in the hammock, and they had open hatch cover above you, just stood straight up in it, and the bottoms fell out of the hammock, so I've gone back straight through onto the floor. And my sergeant that's with us, all he could do was laugh. He reckons it's the funniest thing he'd ever seen, and never fired a shot. They were too busy laying on the floor, and the carrier didn't know what had happened. It was just the first...
Laughing?
Oh, not quite, but I landed on all the toolboxes and all the gear that we've had down, stored on the floor and things like that. I never slept in a hammock again, but I slept on the floor on cushions on the floor after that. Just to sleep on the floor in the carrier cued me.
So did you do a bit of damage to yourself?
No, not really. Just some cuts and that. It was just one of those things. But it was just you couldn't have got it worse. And Graham Hand, who was the sergeant, thought it was the most hilarious thing he's ever seen, because he'd been there a bit and had a few contacts. And but it's pretty frightening for first up early in the morning, and your nerves are on edge anyway. From then on, but we had a few contacts and ambushes go up, and it wasn't a big deal. And said before, for us anyway, ones that we had, they're all over very quickly, and whether you shot at anyone or not, it's pretty hard to say. Just spraying bullets into the jungle and just letting off mines and just wait till day. Usually then wait till daylight and for someone to go and have a look around and see what's happened with it. But
all right. Can you really just walk us through from when you actually left base to walk us through the whole night and tell it?
Normally, you would have rolled out of there with probably 20 carriers, I suppose, and probably between that there would have been probably 80 soldiers, like grunts, a little bit better, plus our own men on it. And
that's 2 to each carrier.
Yeah, 2 drivers to each carrier, and some got 3, 2 personnel, and some got 3 on them. Like different crews and different ones, whichever they are. Then probably 80 odd other personnel that we would taken them with us as well. And they sometimes that particular time we actually dropped them a little bit earlier, and they set up their own ambushes. Then the carriers actually make their own ambushes as well, sort of separate to them a little bit.
And
from
how do you
it further
do that?
along.
How do you actually set
up? They've got a plan to start with of what they're going to do in this particular area, and it's all mapped out, and they'll have where they're going to situate, so you know where they are. And you'll set up further up the road, a bit further up, and usually pick up these little bush tracks, and we try and get in there just on dark. And that's the whole name of the thing, so the Viet Cong really don't know where you've been or where you're going, and so you try and set up all your ambushes just going into dark, so you can set them up there.
So they work. That's your cover?
Yeah, that's your cover. Yeah. Try and just get him there just before dark. Then they can't. They're not sure where you've gone for the night. Then.
Couldn't they hear you?
No, not a lot of times. We'd probably move in there sometimes. A week before occasionally. But on this particular one, but we've got them on the first night, which is really, a bit out of the norm actually. They obviously hadn't been using the area for a bit, and they've come from further away and just using it as a path through there. And that's what tends to happen. People, the special service guys tend to watch these trails a bit and try and get a movement on it and see what's happening with it. And even the infantry guys, they might be out there and before they'll ambush them sometimes, just set it up and see how much better they can get it, not how much traffic it's using or where they're going to. But that, particular night we were fortunate enough for it to go off pretty early. And it's probably only been set off by 2 or 3 people. It wouldn't have been a big lot, because from what I can recall, there's sort of no returning fire. It was only all us outgoing stuff. So, and they would have probably just tripped on the Claymore mines and set it off, just on tripwires. So they've instigated themselves, and away it's gone. And even, maybe might not even been any people. Could have been just pigs or something like that doing it too. Happens. Something else, or monkeys run them over.
And who's put the mines? Who's actually?
We set them up ourselves.
Right.
Yeah, you carry them on your carrier. Then every night when you do a night harbour, you set out these protection anti-personnel knives out in a big area around your perimeter in the grass, facing outwards and that, and then you can run all the leads back to your carrier. So the guy that's doing the night watch, you do 2 hours on, 2 hours off all night on picket duty. Just get used to that rotation of. And if you've got another guy with you, it's a little bit better, you get a bit longer. But if there's only 2 of you, tend to rotate around all the time, and just, there's always someone awake, or more than that awake, you 2 or 3 guys awake at the one time. And normally if you sense any movement whatsoever, you just first thing you do is push all the triggers on the mines. And that just literally sprays all the area in front of you to start with, and you start popping up flares so you can see what's happening. You have all these flares sitting alongside you, and you just start popping them. And then, sort of open fire at movement.
And how did the flares show you what's happening?
They just go up in the air, just pop up in there like a big light. They just glow up in the air and just slowly drift back down to ground level again.
Wouldn't that notify the enemy where you
it
are?
does where we are, yeah. But you've got to put them up so you can see what's going on. And they know where you are anyway half the time. Once you start firing overnight with weapons and that, you get tracer coming out of them. But probably first night out, it sticks with you a little bit, because I'll feel the humorous part of it more than anything. Just what happened to us. It's quite funny. Never fired a shot, and it was all over in a matter of seconds. And then you get to go to sleep then to the rest of the night, because you're up on stand to right through till daylight again.
What do you mean? You couldn't go to sleep?
No, you don't go back to sleep. Usually after an ambush, you stay awake, and everyone stays awake till the next morning. Then you go again from there. We moved positions again then, because that's already been triggered off, and you go further out. And we would have spent probably 4 weeks out first up before we came back to base camp with it.
That must have been really tiring.
It is. You get used to sleeping, short breaks, and because if you're in the one position, if you're set up in the one spot for quite a while, you sleep during the day and that as well. When if you're not doing anything else, you just sleep, because you're only sitting there watching, trying to be quiet. Not great for your nerves, especially night time and that. And that's probably through the night's probably the worst thing, because everything moves. But after a while, you get used to it, and you're not as jumpy with it. And towards the end of it, you're probably blasé about it more than anything with it, for us anyway. Pretty comforting sleeping in a tank. Full good solid walls around you. It sort of takes a good hit to do any damage to you if you're inside it. So.
Did you lose any tanks while you were on that?
Yeah, we lost, not on that one, but we have lost them, lost to mines. I think all the time I was there we lost 13 altogether through mine damage, but a lot of them, there's only 1 or 2 that we actually sent back to Australia that we couldn't repair in what we call in country. All the rest of them were repaired in country, which is not a bad testament really. Considering the Americans, if they just blew even one wheel off theirs, they'd get a new one. Just take it up the base and pick up another one. They'd transport one out to them. Where Australian guys, we haven't got the American budget and used to fix everything.
Did you, because you were involved in firing and etc. as well, not just fixing?
We do both. We're part of the tank squadron itself when we're in operations in the field. But if they broke down, we would just put your mechanic's hat on and you become the mechanic. just like your MRA road service.
So can you talk about the first time you actually had to fix a tank when you were out on out in the bush?
Yeah, it's only basic stuff. We probably track throwing was probably the biggest problem we used to have with, they just throw the track off them, where guys wouldn't do their maintenance properly. The tank crews themselves wouldn't keep them, the personnel crews, they wouldn't keep them tight enough, the tracks. And they'd
You mean
screw
by
them.
going one after another in a straight line?
No, just keep them tensioned on the track properly. And if they didn't keep them tensioned up properly, they'd spin them off on corners sometimes, so they're a little bit too horrific on it, and break them off. Sometimes from driving them, across rough ground too fast, they'd break a torsion bar, or they'd wrap a bit of wire up around the wheels and just do a internal wheel seal on it, and you do a wheel bearing. Pretty basic repair stuff. Just a matter of taking a road wheel off it, and split the track off, take the road wheel off, and change the bearing in it, put it back on again. Just minor stuff like that. It's only when they hit a landmine, then you're sort of looking at major damage a lot of times, where we carry some components with them, but a lot of it would, if it was a front drive or something like that, we'd get it flown in, we'd get on a helicopter and usually send another mechanic out with it, bring out the drive, final drive train, we'd change it in the field if that's all the damage was, unbolt the section and put it back on.
So you wait for the chopper to come?
Yeah, you wait for them to come. And usually then the other tanks, the other personnel carriers would just form up like around the broken down one, just give you a bit of protection, and in case you got another strike or something like that on it.
While you were fixing?
Yeah, while you were repairing it. But it never happened most of the time. They'd hit and run and go. Or if it was a landmine, it would have been set up there a long time ago and someone's run over it. And that's probably the biggest nightmare over there for a personnel carrier driver. And going anywhere, the Vietnamese are pretty smart at that. They'd, if we were using a road, and they might see us use it 3 or 4 days in a row, like running up and down the road, they'd previously had planted say an old disused bomb in it, and then they'd come back and it'd be in the ground there, and they'd have it marked where it was. Then they'd you'd run over it heaps of times up that particular road. Then they'd come back and put a trigger in it and catch them out, and that's where they used to get a lot of guys that way. They were even there once. We had a tank. We used to have these special landmine clearing tanks, and they were running up the road, went over a crest of the road, out of sight of everyone, turned around and come back, and on the way back had the boom back up because he cleared the road and ran over a mine and blew it up. They just come out and...
Did they come out in that time?
Yeah, they were watching it and just triggered it. It's just, some things like that they were really good at. And pretty dangerous. Yeah, they could lift mines and any disused bombs or anything like that. And that's the worst nightmare to to driving a personnel carrier over there, was just the mine damage, because they could be pretty horrific if you hit a big one. Early in the piece, before I got there were guys killed off them. While I was there was no one killed. You had actually driving a tank, few guys, carrier, a lot of guys were, a few wounds and that from it.
From the landmines?
Yeah, from landmines, yeah.
Were you there when anyone got wounded?
Only once, yeah.
Can you talk about, when did that
happen?
happen?
It was just, they were just running up the road and hit a mine on the back end of it, and then most of it's just eardrum damage, stuff like that, no shrapnel wounds or anything like that. It's just one of that, not a big hit, we were very lucky really, but just a minor thing. Yeah, we had one of our own mechanics got a broken ankle from running over a landmine in actually my carrier. Yeah, we did a lot of operations, and I'd been out with quite a few times, and we'd come back, and anyway, I was due for some leave and I wanted to take it, and then we had a new guy come in, Wayne back from Narromine actually, he came from, and anyway I was assigned to take him. And I pulled out. I said, no, look, I want some time off. I did enough at the moment. I just feel I need a break.
How long had you been working?
We'd probably had 6 months or better in country.
No leave?
Yeah, only 1 day off here and there, and you can have a week's leave, you can have some time off, stuff like that. And we just felt like we'd done it. We'd been working pretty hard and had enough, and really didn't want another operation at that stage. So anyway, another guy took him. Actually, Wayne Scott took him, and they hit a landmine. But you would never know. It could have been just bad luck on the driver, or might just not taken any notice, or just unlucky.
And they were killed?
No, broke his ankle, that's all.
Oh, he broke his ankle, right.
Yeah, broke his ankle. And that's a pretty common injury at that stage of the game. It was for, if you're actually a driver and you ran over a mine, you'd get your ankle broken.
Why is that?
Oh, because of the configuration inside the carriers, the right foot pressed the accelerator and it would bend if something went in it, but the left foot had just a piece sticking out off the firewall, which you rest your foot on it, and it was just a solid peg, and there's no give in it, and you'd be resting your leg on it when the mine would go off underneath the front of the carrier, because it's normally the front wheel that set it off, and just the concussion of it coming up used to just jar your ankle up, smash your ankle for you. Yeah, you had a few injuries like that. Then they went to, there was a big modification come out that we actually went through and cut the solid foot pegs off. They made collapsible footrests for them, and we fitted them up to all the carriers. That was to try and stop that injury from happening.
Whose idea was that?
Oh no, one of the boffins somewhere along the line. A few things. You used to have to redo the hatch cover so they'd stay down, because they used to fly up and hit one on the head initially.
What would fly up and hit them?
The hatch cover from behind. It'd, catches wouldn't hold, and the thing would come over and hit the driver on the head and give him a concussion on the head. Because they'd be wearing their nice soft berets to look good, and instead of their helmets. A few little things happen here and there that probably, and also, when they started using it, I was saying before about the belly armour, that was probably one of the biggest things that saved a lot of guys' lives over there, really, from the mine damage. They just could take a better hit from underneath. Absorb it all a lot better.
You mentioned that when you first went out bush, the first night, and you suffered, you got a landmine. You said you told us the funny part, but you said actually it really did have a much deeper impact. It's
sort of driving home that it's pretty real what you're dealing with here now. And you can't afford to be slack. You have to watch what you're doing, and I think that was probably the thing that drove us home pretty well. That taught us a lesson pretty early in the part, that you had to really be careful what you did when you're working in the field, and when watch what's happening. And if you're on night duty and stuff like that, don't be a slacker and go to sleep. And I think every guy learns that somewhere along the line, that it is real. You can get hurt here if you're not careful. Just careful what you do.
And the noise, that initial noise, the first landmine you heard, must have been
pretty horrific. Just the commotion that goes with it. Because everybody's yelling at everyone, and just the noise of firing and stuff like that, and you're trying to talk on the radios, and in some instances, they call in artillery support as well. So next one, you got shells sort of starting to land in the vicinity of you as well. So you're just hoping they don't hit you. That's usually called in a sighter to start with. They do. So you see where it hits, and then they can walk them up from there.
Did that happen? Have you been on out bush when you've had to call in?
Yeah, they've called in artillery. Yeah, while we've been there. Yeah. And it's interesting.
Can you kind of describe the scene? What would actually your role be when?
Yeah, we're still we're in an ambush situation where it's gone off, and you're not sure what's about. So you call in the artillery, then now you might range them out at say 200 yards or so from where you are. Then you'll call in a range to start with, and they'll drop one down for you. Then you either walk them up, or what they call walk them up, or walk them back.
What do you mean?
You call them in. You call your figures in closer.
Your figures?
Yeah, you're calling them your grid references, the distances and that. And so you either call them in a bit further out, or you want them closer to you. They can come in a bit closer, because the first sighting one, you plot it and tell them where it's actually landed. So you know that on the map that's where it is. This is where you are, and they should be in the right spot. And a bit of luck, they shouldn't hit you. Learning to read maps is really important. And especially and knowing where you are exactly. It's just we didn't have sat nav those days. It's a big thing in it is actually knowing that.
So you'd have to every step of the way know exactly where you were on your map.
Yep, on your map. Yeah, and a lot of times, even if you mightn't have been, normally the guy in charge of the section of carriers would be doing that, but a lot of times you'd even do it yourself, just to so you knew what was happening, and you'd plot your own, you have your maps there, and you'd always keep on touch, to where you actually were travelling and where you were, how many and they used to call it, counting clicks back then.
And, What,
yeah.
So what would that mean exactly? Counting clicks? Counting clicks?
Counting clicks, yeah. It's just a term you use for counting distance. Yeah, it might be 40 clicks, 50 clicks, which is sort of 50 metres, 50 feet back then, I think it was, something like that. And just sort of feet or yards, I can't remember now. Yards, I think it is. Clicks, yards. It's just a terminology.
All that stuff's really interesting because sometimes the
And I'll probably
terminology
have it wrong.
changes.
And I'll probably have it wrong, but no, it was called clicks.
Yeah.
It used to. And the same, all your radio stuff was never, it was always call sign work. Zero Charlie used to be the headquarters.
At Nui Dat?
At Nui Dat, it was always Zero Charlie. Then you might have the head of, just in our organisation, 908 was our lead carrier, then 908 Alpha, then 908 Bravo. And in some of the other just call signs amongst the other guys, you had 10 Bravo, 10 Alpha, Charlie, or 31, 31 troop, and 31 Alpha. Same thing, to have 3 carriers that made up that, what they used to call a troop, just 3 lots. And you went to the all the mortar tracks, which were a different setup again, but they were like 8.4s and 8.5s. So you pretty well knew when you were talking in the language what you were talking about, whether you're talking about mortar tracks. You call in 184 up here, well you were chasing the mortar track to
what
come
do you
up
mean
to
by
them.
mortar track exactly?
They carried a mortar inside them and used to fire rounds out of it. It was on a base like a transportable gun, but just a mortar. And they used to fire it, be able to fire shells and carry a fair bit of weaponry on board on them. They just, we had probably, I think 4 or 5 mortar troop. 5, 8, 6, 8, 7, probably 5. Trying to think of the numbers.
That's all right.
But
It must have been like, given you telling us how little sleep you got, 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day?
Yeah, you do it all the time.
For a month at times?
Yeah, you could just do it. Even the infantry guys, you could do it after a while. You just go to sleep, drop of a hat.
So would the month be the longest that they'd send you out?
No, we've had 6 weeks away on one job. But mostly, only 3 to 4 weeks. Depends on what was happening or what depends on what operations they wanted to do. Any big long-term ones, or if you're a fair way from Nui Dat, up on the border or somewhere. Depends how sustained they wanted to do something at the time. That's all. Or how involved were some of the infantry guys. How many of them you had out with you as well. How long you could keep them out for was the biggest problem probably, because they had to be pretty well self-sufficient. Where we had the luxury of having, like plenty of fresh water on board, clean clothes, like you carry, your personal gear with you, and luxury of having a wash every night.
You had a shower in the tent?
No, we just had a basin there, but we had plenty of water which you could do that with, where the infantry guys only carry normally what they drank, just drinking water, and the same clothes that they live in them pretty well until they fell apart and get some new ones. And,
Would you have much to do with the infantry guys when you were working together?
Yeah, well, we used to do. If we did operate it out of a place called the Horseshoe, which is a forward sport base from Nui Dat, where I can't think of the company that was there, but there was quite a big infantry base there, and we'd do ambushes out of there with them. And so what we used to do with them, but we'd go and pick them up late of an afternoon, then take them out into the field and drop them off, then come back and spend the night in the Horseshoe. Then go back in the morning and pick them up again. And you could take them, like 10 mile away. Just run them down the road to Billio and they'd drop them off, and they'd do that every night. And just bring them back again during the day. And then next night they'd take them somewhere else. And we did that for quite a while. They were trying to do it around one of the villages there, Vung Tau, I think. It was suspected of having sympathisers with the Viet Cong. So they'd try and cut them off from coming in there. So they're sort of ringing the village every night, and sometimes we'd might do it 2 nights in a row, then not do it the 3rd night, just to, just try and on and off to try and trick them into coming in, make them get hungry and come looking for food. They did things like that, and it was quite interesting to work with. Actually, I first ran in. There was a guy from Convoy actually had been in regular soldiers, and he was posted over there, which I didn't know. And we wheeled into into the Horseshoe the first night. And if you can get a free meal at a mess, you always went there instead of cooking for yourself. So we've gone up to their mess. Anyway, I'm lined up, and because everything you got to line up for. And we're lined up and we're getting a meal, and anyway this voice in the background yells out, "There's some ignorant bastards living in Condobolin in there." And I'm sort of looking around, kind of like this. And that was the guy from here, Jeff Boland, and I didn't even know he was over there.
And he was in the infantry?
He was in the infantry, yeah. He was on his second tour, actually, Jeff was.
Oh, he must have liked it.
Yeah, well, just a read. Yeah, and so he came with us that night. He asked him what carrier we were driving, and so I told him that, so he came with us that night. And and he, for the next few days, he'd just jump on with us and we'd take him out. It was good, really, catch up with guys from home and that. Didn't know he was there. And the same as another, just going off the track a bit, we're off working on a carrier. And you used to, when they'd bring them in, after they'd been in operations, you'd have them, and you'd service all the carriers that were due for service. The Army's got A, B, C, D servicing, like all different aspects of how they like to have their vehicles run. And we're sort of carrying out a service, and normally the tank crew, the carrier crew help you work on that carrier. They've got certain tasks that they've got to do instead of the mechanics doing it, like all the labouring jobs mostly, like get the tanks off, get the tracks and everything off them, get the wheels off them, and we do more of the technical work.
So what would that service be called that you would do?
Yeah, that's a full-on sea service, the whole show. Yeah.
So sea service is like the works?
Yeah, everything, changing oils, the whole show on it, fair bit of major work. Anyway, I'm working alongside this bloke, and the same story, where you come from? And he said, "Oh, you would know this place, Trundle." And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I don't know about that." I said, "I come from Condobolin, we're not very far apart." And anyway, we got talking. I didn't know him. He actually works on a property, or worked on a property here for Halls. And I knew the property, but never knew him at all. He's just one of those guys that was quite unassuming, and he only had about 90 days to go then. And anyway, we got to be pretty good mates over it, because a few things in common. And I said to him, "Look, when you go home," I said, "go and see my mother at the pub." And Dennis never drank, this guy. He was just one of those quiet blokes that never had a beer or anything like that. So he's walked into the hotel on a Saturday morning and asked for a carton of beer. The mum served him, and then he said to her, "Oh, you Dickie Taylor?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'd just been with your son over there."
Your mum would have been.
Yeah,
she would have been chaffed, or had you been in much
pretty
contact
thrilled
with her?
Oh yeah, we wrote quite regularly, really, and she was pretty thrilled about it. Anyway, I said to Dennis like years after, I said, "What did you do with a carton of beer?" He said, "I just took it home and gave it to Jack Hall." He said, "I didn't know how to approach her at all," and so he started like that. And it just that was a neat little thing to do, really. Yeah. But you run to different places in different areas with it.
I was going to ask you, when you were taking the infantrymen out, did you and then you were picking them up again in the morning? Obviously, sometimes there was people that you were taking back that were injured.
No, we didn't sort of get any. In the few times I had with them, we didn't get an incident with them. In that area anyway, with any of the guys at all, really. They'd set off some ambushes, but nothing had become of it. There's no incoming into them. Most of it just all outgoing on their part. And really, pretty well any incident that we're involved in, we had no injuries at all. Which is, except, like as I said, with mainly from just the mines. That's probably where we had most of our just injuries from. That was about it. And one accidental with one of the young blokes on one of the carriers walked into a helicopter blade, and that was a bit tragic and something that shouldn't happen, but it does happen. Just get careless. That was a very unfortunate accident, actually. But,
when you were taking the infantry guys back, would you chat about what they'd just done and what they'd
they'd probably most of the time go and crook at us for sleeping in good warm beds, like in our carriers, and they got to sleep in the dirt. That was always a bit of a one-on-one banter all the time, actually. And you blokes are the Green Cab Company, and that's what they used to call us, the Green Cab Company. And you'd have a little notations on the wall, so much a flagpole,
1 or 2 beers or things like this was the going rate, or goffers as they were called, like soft drinks. It's called a goffer, and 1 goffer or 2 goffers if you want us to pick you up again, things like that. But no one ever paid you. It's just a bit of a thing with them. But yeah, no, they still, I don't envy them. Really, I'm quite comfortable sleeping in the carrier instead of sleeping on the ground.
Why you say you don't envy them? I mean,
no, a lot of
apart
respect
from their
for,
sleeping,
yeah,
what
a lot,
they
lot of respect for infantry guys. Yeah. Especially, like over there, you're by yourself, and you just, you get left with only what you're carrying. And if you want to, the same with food and stuff like that. And if it's raining, you get wet through. And food's nothing trivial because a lot of times they can't heat things up. Just cold food. We had the luxury of being able to heat food. And it wasn't until if they started to heat stuff while they're blowing their cover a lot of times. So, we'd be away, well out of sight, and could have a bit of luxury.
Well, how would you heat your food?
Oh, I had little burners. And the infantry guys had little burners as well, just these things, and just heat it up in a pannikin and eat whatever you had. With that, a lot of it, that's a lot of the food is actually dried rations, and you add water to them, and it's supposed to taste good. Yeah, you get the ration packs. If you're going to go out in operations, you'd go and get rations out of the store, and you'd go through the packs and throw everything you didn't really want, and everything you want to keep.
What would you
go
keep?
with that. All the tin fruit.
Tin fruit?
Tin fruit, yeah.
Did you get bully beef, or that?
No, not so much that. We just get a beef of some description in there, but
Tinned.
Yeah, tinned beef, but just basic baked beans and no brand names. A lot of dried foods that you just added water to, stuff like that, and you could get to be a bit of a cook if you add this and add that, and sort of go all right that way. But, a lot of braised steak and braised sausages and food like that. It's probably pretty unappealing sometimes, and add something to it and make it liven it up a bit. But the Yanks had pretty good rations. They weren't too bad. If that's something ahead, you used to pinch some of their packs if you ever get a hold of them.
How would you get hold of the?
You trade them, or if you con them into getting them off the bloke. Sometimes you saw them around, try and swap them something of yours for something of theirs.
Yeah.
And that usually, barter system works well.
And so did you have much contact with the Americans?
Yeah, we did a few jobs with Americans, that on and off. Went to one of their one of their big bases where they have all their gear up at Saigon, and we actually up at Long Bin actually, and we got a lot of parts for our carriers which we couldn't get out of Australia at the time, and went up there and on a bit of a forging mission, and a couple of guys and a bit of loot we took with us, like trading them for beer.
They didn't have beer themselves?
Oh, they had beer themselves, not Australian beer, but yeah.
And it's not as strong.
Oh yeah. So it was like having gold if you could get hold of it, and so we did some deals with them like that, which was pretty highly unethical, but it still worked, and we got a lot of parts that we were short on. It's a bit crazy that the government's got you over there trying to do something and you can't get parts, but that's the way it was. The Yanks had access to heaps and heaps of things, really, where we didn't.
Were they nice to you when you went up to their base?
Oh yeah, no, they were all right. They were fine. Yeah, we had a good time. Looked after. We had a couple of days up there actually. Took us to their messes and ate with them and stuff like that, and chatted to them and drank with them, because you'd drink them under the table. Wouldn't matter anyway. Couldn't let them beat you at anything.
And how did their mess compare to the Aussie mess?
They're a bit better now because they had Vietnamese people like looking after them, waitering on them and stuff like that. This is on some of theirs, and all their uniforms and that were all washed and starched, and where ours were just chucked through the machine and just drag them back on again. The way you go, there's no starch or anything like that. So they're always pretty tidy as far as that went. They always dressed up pretty well. Where our stuff was, got a bit ratty after a while.
Michael, you were just telling us a bit about the American mess situation where they would often have Vietnamese serving, and it was all a little more luxurious than the Australian circumstances. What were the differences in the actual food that the Yanks were eating?
Oh, the food in our messes probably, food would be compared to it, but they probably had a lot more fresh stuff, than what we were actually getting, really. Yeah, it looked, like a bit better quality than what we were getting. But in saying that, still, like our cooks that we had in camp weren't too bad. You didn't sort of suffer too much on the food side of things, especially when you're in camp and that. But rations outside of that, pretty ordinary, really.
Did it take long after you arrived in Vietnam to really get a close understanding of the state of the war and how well it was all going, and to sort of get to the nitty-gritty of what was really going on?
No, it probably didn't take you that long to get a gist of what's happening there and stuff like that, and how well it was going. Well, that's anyone's thing, and I don't think anyone knew how well it was going. All that the Boffins wanted was really, body counts. Everything was a body count all the time. If you set up an ambush where you got 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 on a body count, which in the scale of things really doesn't mean much, really, with it. But and also, how well the villagers or something were cooperating with them, getting quietened down, and in our particular province more than that. That's pretty well all the, like if you had a briefing at all at any time, it was always on, an ambush at so-and-so, it's a body count of this many, or this was successful, or we're doing operations around this particular village, and we've had no people coming into there for the last, say, 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or, they've been doing search and destroy missions and found, so many bags of rice, so many catches of weapons, which could have been buried there for a long time. Might have found a campsite somewhere and all it was there was just buried, everything was buried and stuff like that. And that's, that was a lot of it, just destroying food supplies, destroying weapons that you found. And obviously, they hadn't been probably used for a long time, but just coming across that. That was, a lot of your information was all about that. What you get. And a lot of our work was probably the same way. Finding hidden rice paddies, then just destroying the rice paddies. A lot of that went on with it.
How would a rice paddy normally be destroyed?
By burning it, or just driving all over it in the personnel carriers and flatten it to the ground. So it just couldn't be used. Bust all the banks.
Did you ever do that sort of thing?
Yeah, we did a bit of it actually. Just drive around the carrier and just chop it all up and bust the banks on it so they couldn't irrigate with it anymore.
While you were there, in the earlier stages that you were there, did you have a sense that there was progress being made in the war and that you were winning the war?
I don't think any of us really looked at the progress side of it, or if we're winning or not. That's in my opinion of it, but I don't think any of us ever looked at it that way. I think most of us looked at was how many days you had left to be there, because that was the thing, to be alive at the end of 365 days. And I think a lot of guys just treat it like that, just cross it off another day and stay out of trouble for the time you're there.
So no one really wanted to be there?
I wouldn't say they wouldn't want to be there, but it was, there was probably guys with that opinion, but it was not so much wanted to be there, but it's just a bit of a thing that when you did get there, you started a calendar to mark off the time that you were going to go home. And I don't think there's a bloke, wouldn't be a bloke there that wouldn't have done it. Just kept marking the calendar off every morning.
After you'd been there for a while and you got a sense of how the Americans were going about taking on the enemy and their tactics, did you have an impression of whether they were going about things the right way?
It's always been the impression of most of the Australian guys that were there that the Yanks probably did it differently to what the Australians were doing it, and also down in Fukui province where we were located most of the time, there wasn't a big American presence down there. They were doing some operations, but not a great deal. We were probably doing most of them down that way. It's just every now and again we'd combine with each other to do operations, probably getting up near the border. To me, I think the Australian guys were probably a little bit better at it. the Yanks in an ambush situation were always very noisy and carry on a bit, where our guys were pretty good at it. I think we probably had a better success rate than what they did.
And getting an opportunity just to mix a little bit with the Yanks and get a feel for them, what did you make of them as soldiers and blokes?
Yeah, well, some we did mix with, socialise. We got on all right with them. I still, without wanting to offend anyone, but still, I think the Australian is probably a better soldier, in that period of time anyway. The ones that we mixed with, the few that we did on and off, I felt they were pretty, high on life, pretty well without too many worries. To me, the Australian guy, especially the Australian infantryman, is a bit more settled with it. I think we're a little bit maybe better trained. I don't know, and I suppose having a lot of national service guys in there, blokes that were there, pretty keen to do a job and get out of there. So
There was a guy that you trained with who wasn't particularly happy about being involved, and he got sent home from Vietnam at some stage.
Yeah, we had a radio mechanic that was across there, and we ended up sending him home. He didn't want to be there, and in that situation, well, it's not good for everybody else to have someone sort of whinging on at you that, about it. And I think the guys in our unit, the superiors and that, sort of better to move him out and be done with it when you're sent back to Australia. And that's the only one I know of that in our unit, and really, probably when you look back now, we're better off without him anyway. We got a better guy come back in, and someone that fitted in, and because you're a group of blokes living together, like a big boarding house, you've got to get on. And if you don't get on, well, it's not much chop. So you all, the whole lot of you have got to gel together with it, because you're constantly with each other. It's not, you can't get away. That's the whole thing with it. So if you've got someone in there that's not, it's not so much pulling their weight, but just, rocking the boat a bit, try and move him out with it. And that's what they, obviously that's what's happened to move him back to Australia.
He was the only one that you had?
The only one that we had with our unit. All the rest of the guys were, pretty good. I won't say all normal, but all pretty good. All we had little quirks.
So there was a good spirit amongst.
We had a real, really good, real good lot of mob of blokes actually. Good to work with all the time, and all pitch in when needed to. Good socially as well. Sort of look after each other pretty well. Good to go out with. When chance we did have leave and that, we could all, a few of us would, bum around together. If we went down to Vung Tau, we'd knock about together as well. And so on the whole, considering even now, we're still a few of us that stick together. We get on well with each other, and we don't see each other very often. It's good to catch up.
Do you recall the first time you went to Vung Tau for a bit of leave? Not really. We would have. I can recall they had you go down and stay in like motel type units, which were a bit better luxury than what we were used to staying in. And they had a pool there. I think it is the Vadco Club down there actually. It's called, and a beach frontage right to it. Went swimming there, and they also had boats there. You could go, pretty old ones they were. We did a bit of skiing there with them, that as well. We've sort of got, got a few of the guys together, and we're actually water skiing there on the South China Sea, which is pretty exciting. But most of it's just sort of sat around the beach, and if you want to go uptown, then go up the bars and drink, pay high price money to drink with the girls, stuff like that. But you go to some. You had to be back out at curfew, which you had to be back into barracks down there by 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It could have been with it. Normally you only just get 1 or 2 days off at a time. That's about all you get
maybe 3, but mostly just 1 or 2 days. Probably 2 days off, or sometimes you get a day off. You'd all just whiz down for a day, and which wasn't that far down. Just
How
go
long
down.
would it take you to get there?
Oh, less than an hour. It wasn't very far at all, really. It's just a bit more removed from the situation you're in, really. You're a bit more relaxed. You didn't have to carry a weapon around or anything with you. You walk around in civvy clothes, that as well. Shorts and shirt and a bit of gear like that to save you. Just get away from the army for a little bit.
So you generally go with a couple of mates?
Yeah, you usually went out with a couple of mates. Not very often, guys went by themselves. But usually with a couple of other guys, sort of all get together and away you go.
And would you end up mixing in with other Australian troops or
Yeah,
American troops?
the other guys down there. Plenty of Australians there on leave, and you get drinking with them, and they'd have shows on down there, like song and dance shows and stuff like that. Some of the touring troops come across from Australia. They're playing down there. You all go and sit and watch them.
Can you recall any of the shows you saw?
Yeah, Little Paddy, she was over there, and Rain Desmond, they were there. And actually a few of them that were at Lucky Girls, he was there. We saw them a few times actually. They played up at the DAT a couple of times as well, Newey DAT and at Luscombe Bowl. It's pretty good there. You just cruise up in the carrier and sit up on top of the carrier and watch the show on Luscombe Bowl. Or you take your deck chair along and sit down and watch it. All the girls were always a big hit with them. They were good entertainment really. And they'd have some Vietnamese ones come through there occasionally. Watch them. They were too bad. They'd try and sing it. And I didn't see any of the Yanks, any of their stuff that they had now.
How often would you get a show at Newey Dat?
Probably saw, maybe 3 all the time were there at Newey Dat. 3 to 4. When you watch some of the videos, I got it seems to be more than that, but they're good entertainment at the time, but they're a bit hard now with silent movies. So you can see the actions, not the words. But it gives you a bit of a look at what's happening with it.
And going out at night in Vung Tau was a bit of fun?
Oh yeah, but you had. I think curfew is 11 o'clock. You had to be back in by then. If you got caught with the MPs out after that, you get fined and reprimand with it. But yeah, some guys would stop out and sneak back in the morning. But yeah, mostly I just go and have a drink with the boys and play up in a bar for a while and head back.
And did you spend much time with the bar girls yourself?
Oh, a little bit, but never got too involved with them. But sort of too big of a worry.
From a health point of view?
From a health point of view, yeah, too big of a worry. Just took it on board, I suppose. Still a naive young bloke, but to me, just having a beer was probably got enough strife doing that with the guys.
So, just on a day-to-day basis, back at Newey Dat, what would you do just to sort of wind down?
Overnight, most time, normally as soon as you finish work, you just dive, head for the showers.
That'll be around about what time on an average day?
Yeah, average day. We'd normally start around 8 o'clock. Break for morning tea. Usually have a fair, raid the kitchen over there every day for morning tea. Have salad rolls and all that sort of stuff, and tea and coffee, and have a good half-hour break from like morning tea, just like an average shop. Then an hour off for lunch with it, and same thing go across. Then finish probably around 5 o'clock.
Would you have a hot meal at lunchtime?
Yeah, just go to the mess, and it depends on what was on. Sometimes only salads and cold meat, but or hot meals or whatever was going. Usually a couple of choices of food. It wasn't too bad. Then break a bit. Usually have afternoon tea. Pull up for a bit of afternoon tea and that as well. Then around 5, finish up and go and have a shower. Then you'd have the boozer would be open usually from about 6 till 6 to 7 or thereabouts, or a bit earlier. And you go there for a little while, a couple of beers, then they'd have stand 2, which was just on dark. And you'd all, if it's your job to man the perimeter line at all. So you do that till after stand 2, then you come back and go and have tea. Then you're quite free to go to the boozer and either go there, play darts or cards or pool, or just sit around, listen to music, talk to guys, or just have just sit about and have beers. You know, and beer was cheap, you know, 10 cents a can, or they might be on special, have a 5 cent night, and you know, if someone was going home, you know, a bit of fun there. But mostly that's what most guys did of a night, or they'd always just you know, go back to your lines and you know, either write or read books, or just listen to music. You know, just relax, not too much at all. You know, or you know, do your washing. You know, there's always probably, you know, something to do, keep you out of mischief and that. Yeah, sometimes you'd have to work. You know, we might be, if we've got a few carriers in there and when, you know, we've got problems with some or stuff like that, or they've been hit with mines, we might, you know, you'd usually work, go and just have tea and come back and work non-stop till the job was finished, and then you'd had you knocked off then. But not, you know, not uncommon sometimes to work straight through the night, you know, till the job was finished. And if you were working on it, you know, sometimes other boys will come back and give you a hand to get it done. You know, because sometimes if you had a motor change to do, it takes you 8 hours to do a full motor change in one, and usually 3 guys working on it flat out. If you get it done, then you put it in, ran it up the road, and the damn thing didn't perform properly, you'd have to change it again, so you'd get stuck back into it again and redo it. So in that situation, you know, it's important to have everything on the road at all times. So you know, you'd just work straight. Just none of that. Just saying, oh, we can't. Sorry, we'll leave it till tomorrow. You know, you couldn't afford it, so you just walk straight through the night and redo them again with it. And same if we got, you know, stuff maybe you got hit during the night in an ambush and they bring it in, we'd start work on it straight away. Assess the damage and start working on it to get it back on the back mobile again as soon as we could. Yeah, you know, good mob of blokes to do that with.
Did you find yourself in that situation very often where you did have to put in a whole night?
Yeah, not very often, but it did, you know, it happened on and off throughout the year we were there. But you know, just a bit more pressure and you just work a bit harder to do it with the guys. Yeah.
When you were standing to, how long does that process take?
Usually just through to you know, just on dusk through till it's dark. You know, 3/4 of an hour. Sometimes.
And the idea is just to be on alert at that time?
Be on alert at that time, yeah. Yep. Then, yeah, then you might be, some nights you're actually rostered on to be on duty that night. Yeah, it might be, you know, so many of the mechanics might be on. So you'll have, you know, like, you had our own gun pit, we had a man continuously through the night, and you'd have 2 blokes down there all night. So what you'd do, you'd swap over, you know, every 3 hours or thereabouts with it. So you go down and you know, one bloke would stay there while the other guy walked up and woke the next bloke up, and you'd have to wait for him to get up out of bed and make sure he was up, and he'd walk down to the gun pit and so on. You'd just do that through the night. So there's always someone man in the gun pit all night, and you had you know, the forward base 0 Charlie would always call you up every half hour and you give him a sit rep. You know, he'd just make sure you were awake, that's all. And occasionally they'd send the bloke around to walk around, make sure you were awake. Make sure things were, you know, you were watching the wire. And that used to, you know, yeah, it didn't come around that much, but it did, you know, if the troop was out, all the troops were out, you'd get a bit more because we were short on guys that were in the base, so you'd probably get, you know, drag a bit more of it. But if everyone was in the base, well, usually the guys that were in, they'd stand them down and you'd probably get 3 or 4 nights off. You wouldn't have to do it, so. But yeah, you just got used to doing that, but just get up and sleep and walk down.
So there were rosters for that?
There were
sort of
rosters
stuff.
for doing that, yeah. Yeah. It's a bit like, you know, same with, you know, work. We'd program, you know, who's going to work on what carriers for the day, you know, who we had in, you know, what carriers we had booked in every day. And you'd work out who's going to be working with who and who gets on well with each other, so you pair them up and let them go. And if you only need one mechanic on the carrier, you only put one on it and work with troops. Then, you know, some of us walk around and supervise and just pitch in here and there and help and, you know, just make sure things were getting done with it.
How many carriers were you working on all up?
70 something I had. Yeah. There'd be nothing to have, you know, probably 7 or 8 and up to 10 in there at a time with them, especially if they've all come back from operations. And they'd fill out a list of repairs they needed to them. You know, the guys would sit down and write out a list, and then you'd sort through the list and get the ones that you really needed, you know, that were major, get them in first and get working on them, and then the minor stuff. And some stuff you just tell the driver to go and fix it himself, you know, sort it out. Or we're not going to put new tracks on that. See ya, keep going, because they always want new tracks. It's just like a bloke with new shoes, they always want them. So you assess that and see what you're going to do there. And some guys always, complain the motor's not running properly and things like that. So you test drive it and see what you thought yourself. If there was a problem with it, well, you'd do something about it. You'd repair it. But they all the same thing, they just had their service schedules, which they had to do anyway. Now it's done all the time, so basic maintenance was carried out in different stages of it. Some easy work, some take you all day to do the job. So, but it's just like running a big garage, enormously big, with expensive machinery.
Would it often be the case that for most situations you'd have 2 mechanics working on a carrier at a time?
Yeah, most of the time you'd have 2 at a time on them. Yeah. And even if we're doing an engine change, we try and get, say, 3 guys onto an engine change. With it, if we had the manpower anyway, and that's it. And if you weren't, if it was a quiet day and you weren't rostered on, even, you might be having a day off, which you'd get rostered days off. You'd pitch in sometimes and give them a hand to do things. You still wouldn't just sit around and lay around. And most guys did that. They'd just get in and work there as well, just to make it just a bit easier on everybody else. Even though you might have been your day off, but still, yeah. But sometimes on a day off you might grab a chopper ride somewhere and go and have a look at something with them and do that with it. And even in the field, we used to, if we had a big problem in the field where we needed more manpower and more parts, we just go, because the RAF guys used to use our loos and showers, they'd fly up from Vung Tau and just camp behind us and just use our facilities. So we used to be able to get a chopper if we needed a job somewhere. So we just walk across there and say, we need to go so-and-so. Yeah, we'll take you with us. So we'd get a ride out and drop our gear off, and they'd come back and pick you up later on if they didn't, or you'd come back in with the carriers, depends what happened.
So if one of the carriers was broken down too far away, you'd jump in the chopper.
Yeah, and if we needed more parts out there and more blokes to work on it, send another bloke out to give them a bit of a hand. Usually if we're sending more parts, we'd always send another guy with them anyway. Just so they could help do things.
And also, as you were saying, if you had a day off, you could often just
jump
get it
right
in and sort of go wherever they were going, just to have a look around.
Yep, they used to do a lot of work with the SAS blokes, and if they were doing SAS drops, you could jump in and go with them and fly out and while they drop the SAS guys off. So that was pretty interesting actually. Yeah, they'd probably take 5 or 6 of them out and say 4 helicopters, and you just fly along on one of the gunships and just drop them in the middle of nowhere, leave them there, just then pick them up later.
Would you get much out of the SAS guys?
No, not really. No, they're just average blokes, but you wouldn't get much out of them. A lot of respect for them. We did a lot of operations with them, with the carriers and that as well. We took them up into some of the hills and that. They'd come with us, and you'd be just driving along in your carrier, and you might have only 1 or 2 to each carrier. You'd spread them out. They'd just step off the carrier, and you keep going, and we do our ambush thing, maybe stay up there 2 weeks or something like that. Then you'd come back down the same road, and they'd just step on board out of nowhere. You wouldn't know unless you'd bloke in front of you said, someone jumped on your carrier. They just materialise. Pretty smart. They were very good.
They had a good reputation.
Good reputation, yeah. Yep. Oh yeah, no. They were, they'd get a lot of information. And that's what they're doing all the time, just gathering information. They initiate contact sometimes, but only if they really had to. But most of the time they just information gather and to what's happening, just watch. Then we'd send all the rest of the guys back up there later on, try and do something with it.
Just going back to the boozer, was that connected to the mess, or was that a separate?
No, a separate thing altogether.
Shack.
Yeah, separate. Yeah, shack. That's right. Yeah, separate shack. It's just a big couple of big rooms and pool table in there, which is always biased to one direction with pretty rough top on it. Sort of saw a lot of years of blokes playing on it, and peach cans is for where the billiard balls used to drop in, the pockets and that. So you knew when you made a shot all right with that. Just chairs. They'd got from somewhere. Nobody knows where they come from, and like a bamboo bar and a bit of decorations and a stereo blaring flat out all the time, and a couple of dartboards, because that was the big sport, was to play darts, and that was always constant, constant happening all the time. If you're a good dart player, you'd go pretty well. Never for any money, normally just for beers with it. And just go and sit around and talk to guys. And also had, we'd get movies pretty well every night as well. Sometimes the same one on and off, but most of the time you just go outside and had an open air screen. You just sit there and watch some movies and take a few beers out with you, and just sit there and sit in your deck chair and have a couple of beers and just relax, see what's going on.
Who'd be serving the beer at the bamboo?
Oh, they had designated guys, so that was their job, to actually run the boozer and keep the books balanced, things like that. Yeah, that was what they did, and that's that was their nighttime job, and day jobs they were just another troopy. Just usually one of the carrier drivers or something like that, one of the senior guys, and it just seemed to be handed on from one to the other.
What sort of beer would be available?
VB was green cans, white cans. Carlton was a bit of a go, and yellow cans, which was 4X back then still. And that's all, excuse me, that's all you'd ask for. Usually green, white, or yellow. So never asked for VB what's name, and drinking green or whatever. They used to pull the lids off, and you always had these plastic lids with you, and they'd pull it. They had to flick the lids off them at the bar because they only allowed 6 at a time or something. So you smack all the plastic lids back on them, and always had can coolers to keep them cold and cart them off to the movies, and all sit out there and say walking back and forth. A few drinks. It wasn't expensive to drink.
And it was pretty much the done thing for everyone?
Yeah, pretty well. I don't, I think most guys had a beer over there. Wasn't too many teetotalers in the place. And probably if you weren't a drinker before we got over there, you were when you got there. Because I never drank very much. I was pretty quiet actually until I went across over there. And probably learned to drink beer with the best of them then. Part of Australian tradition, I suppose. Pretty well.
So if there was no work on, it'd be pretty much a nightly event?
Yeah, if it's no work on, it was a pretty nightly event. Yeah, just go across a few drinks. And some guys, sometimes just sit and write letters first, then wander across later on. Just see what's happening with the players. Sometimes just play cards back in your lines with different blokes. So you might have a card game going there, so you just sit around and play cards with them.
Were there spirits? That's all right. Michael, were there any spirits available at the boozer?
Not at the OR's boozer, only at the sergeant's, but spirits were still available. Like after hours, you'd either buy it when you're at Vungans and smuggle it back up, or you'd con someone else into buying it for you, or buy it off the Yanks. And after hours, we always had spirits in our lines, but same thing. You got caught, you'd getting a bit of strife over it, but no one sort of. It was just pretty well the norm occasionally. Probably a bit heavy on the spirit drinking, most of us, when drinking in pint mugs and a dash of Coke and vodka, or vodka and Bundy rum and Bacardi rum, was the flavour of the thing, and Scotch. And to this day I really don't like Bacardi rum anymore. I can't understand why, but but it was. They're normally on like going home nights or something like that. Usually partied on somewhere a bit later on. Someone always found somewhere to go after a drink. If you hadn't had enough beforehand with it.
And there were quite a few parties and events here and there?
Oh yeah, well I think in our unit nearly every, like Tuesday night used to be just about, welcome the new guy in, and you fly home on a Wednesday morning, and there's always someone changing over. It wasn't one week, it'd be the next week. You'd be getting rid of one guy and getting another one in, and with it. So there's always some excuse to have a few after hours drinks.
And you were saying earlier that you never really struck anything else, like drugs, no marijuana or anything like that around the place?
In our group of guys, I could pretty safely say that no one in there was doing drugs or anything like that. I think most of us just pretty high on life, and like get enough kicks out of what we're doing as far as alcohol and stuff like that. But that's amongst all the guys that I work with there, and which is pretty good, really. And I think it's a bit of a trend with. More so probably some of the Australian troops. You might get the odd one, but in our unit, I can speak for them pretty well. They're good mob of blokes, and we always yeah, we got up enough mischief, I suppose, to get through life with over there. Without that.
Did you ever spot the Yanks messing around with
Yeah, you
anything
could
like
smell
that?
them. You could smell them. I had a couple of, did some work at a little place called Swan Mock, and we were out there for a while, and the boys out there every night having drinks, so you could just smell it sitting when you're sitting around. Each their own.
Apart from Vung Tau, was there anywhere else that you'd travel to for recreation?
No, I went. Oh, well, only with our ordinary, out of country leave, which I ended up flying to Hong Kong because I figured I'd probably, a lot of guys came back to Australia, had to leave here, and I thought, well, I didn't go on leave till February, I think, or thereabouts. And I was coming home in May, so it's pointless coming back to Australia then. So I decided we'd go up to Hong Kong. There was 14 of us went up together, it worked out. Most of us were mechanics of some description, all different units, and a few other guys thrown in, and a couple of Yanks on our flight as well. And we all booked into the one. They used to book your package deals in the Hong Kong World Hotel over there, actually, and it cost us, back then you had to put in $1,000 US. That was your payment for cover your time while you're there at the hotel, for all your accommodation and food and stuff like that. Then they also booked your packages where you could go touring the countryside with it, and nighttime tours and daytime tours. We got to a lot of the nighttime ones, but the first ones in the morning we didn't quite make it to them. I think we were a bit slow getting out of bed, the boys. It was good. It was a good time. We had one floor of the hotel to ourselves, and all individual rooms. And what we'd do would be, like you might have breakfast in a room. The whole heap is in there together, and that guy would pay for breakfast. And the next morning you'd move on to another room, and he'd just sign the tab. We all had money, he just signed the tab. And the same thing, you'd come back in overnight after being out all night, and you might have a party in, say, in my room, and all of us in my room, we'd drink the mini bar dry, and then bring up and get more, and that was up to you to pay for the tab on that. So you just sign the tab, and to someone down the line, you just go to the next bloke's room. And it was just part and parcel of it. It was good fun, and we had a great time with it. Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed being in Hong Kong, and now when I look back at photos of Hong Kong and what you see of it, like being there in the 70s, it's incredible to see the way it's changed. And even over there, we had a great time there. Went out to New Territories, a place like that, and went on ferry rides and just cruised around, and started taking out some American girls that were on a cruise ship there, and they fell in love with all us mad Australian guys. It was a good time. We had a great time with them. And out of that, one of the girls I was with, we wrote to each other for quite a while after we went back to Vietnam, and she, with all indications and talking later in history, that she was all keen to come back to Australia and settle down with this Australian guy. But anyway, she went back to the States and got tangled up over there, and eventually stayed there. And we met each other again. Probably would have been 20 years down the track. Got in touch again and came out and saw her and met her. It was good, good fun and good reunion with it. But the rest of some of the Yanks that were there with us, we've kept in touch with them a little bit on and off. And I tried to see one of them while I was in America here a while back, but we couldn't get together, which was a bit unfortunate, really. But we'll try again and see him, get on him. But he was just a guy, made a big impression and good fun with it. But we had a good time over there. Then we just flew back into which is really scary. You go from a battle zone, where you're full on alert, into mixing with people, real people. Then 7 days out, then you're flown back straight into it again. It's it's one of those situations that really doesn't happen that often. And the same, like the guys that were returning to Australia and coming back, I feel for them, really. I thought it would be hard to be over there and come to Australia and go back out again. Where to me, like to fly into Hong Kong, it wasn't, it was just not that big of a deal, and to fly back out. And when I flew back in again, I knew that I really didn't have that much longer to go before I was on my way home anyway. And which is probably the whole thing that you look at all the time you're there. How much more time you got to spend there with it.
Did you mix with any locals in Hong Kong?
No, not really. Only like as I said, the Americans that we met there, and no, just only where we went and ate and dined and stuff like that. Caught buses around the place sometimes, or caught cabs, and like you had 15 blokes trying to get into a few cabs. Used to cause a bit of fun. Occasionally, or even catching the bus. You'd jump on a bus and you get half on a bus before they take off and leave you behind. So we had a good time. We had a tourist guide. That was about the only local that we had. She was a Japanese girl that was assigned to us. And like we had a bus that they used to pick us up in sometimes and cart us around. And, yeah, she was good fun. She spoke really good English and got in the spirit of things with all of us. And I suppose she's a bit lucky with like 15 blokes carting around. She was pretty attractive actually, but they didn't come to any of our parties and that. She sort of drew the line there with us, but used to drop us back at the door and made sure we were heading inside and we'd all bolt again once you got rid of her.
Did you do any shopping over there?
Yeah, not a great deal because we could buy it all back in Vietnam anyway, and just same sort of money. So only a few little odds and ends. We didn't buy much at all actually. With it, mainly just sort of ate good food and beer and relaxed. More than anything, and just looked at the sights. That was more the thing. But rang home from over there. Actually, rang Mum at the pub. Had a chat to her for a while. Which was that was a bit of a novel thing to do because you couldn't do it from Vietnam actually. So just rang there.
You can't do that from.
No, we couldn't
do
ring
that from
out
Saigon.
No. Well, not we knew of anyway. But probably didn't even think it was just one of those things there. We thought we'd do it, and we had some money left over still. I think all of us, that we had to put in $1,000. I don't think any of us got much of our money back by the time we paid for food, and we didn't wreck anything, which was really good. But that's what you had to put in. Because we lived pretty well with it.
Did you end up spending any time around Saigon?
Not very much really. Only just a couple of days. Just sort of went up and just either buying stuff or picking up gear from different places up there. Just drove up and drove out again. We didn't spend a lot of time up there.
So that's where you buy your goodies whenever you need.
No, you could buy them in Vung Tau what they call a PX there. You could just at Nui Dat itself had a PX, and if it wasn't there, you could order it in. But you could go there any time you like and buy stuff duty free and pretty cheap. Well, that's what we thought it was anyway back then. You could order in stuff out of catalogues and wherever else you wanted and just buy it, and it'd be delivered right there. Pick it up. It was what I didn't really have to go anywhere else to buy it.
What would be popular stuff that?
Mainly stereos. They were really popular back then. Like a good amplifier. Everyone had the biggest amp and good speakers. And reel-to-reel tape decks were all the go then. Big, massive, big 4-inch reel-to-reel tape decks. So, they were the go. All of us pretty well, nearly every bloke bought something like that. Then buying movie cameras and cameras. Watches were all you were always buying new watches to send back home and stuff like that. Because they were pretty cheap. All your name brands. Seikos were all the go back then. Would have liked to kept someone that we've had now. Seems to have wiped them all out over the years.
So your policy, the whole.
Were you elevated to? You were elevated to Lance.
Yeah, I eventually got to a Lance Corporal, and I was actually getting paid to do a sergeant's job, so I worked there. And promotions we could have had in the field, but we didn't sort of worry about them too much. You got paid for it on paper for money wise, so that was good enough, I suppose.
So when were you actually promoted to Lance Corporal?
Probably 4 months there, I suppose. Just not dead sure on it. I didn't look it up actually, but
is that normal? Is 4 months, or did you do pretty well being
promoted
like
it's
that?
Reasonably normal. Depends on your aptitude, I suppose, with it. Some guys probably didn't get anything at all, promotions. But I don't know. Maybe aptitude, maybe how you apply yourselves, qualities. I don't know. There must be somewhere.
And how much were you getting paid when you first went in as a private?
I really can't remember. I can't. I just couldn't even pluck a figure out. Even though we used to sign for our pay slips and things, I think we're only drawing probably like $25 a week. That's about all. That's all we're getting. Like drawing with our pay. But I really can't. I can't even find a pay book actually.
But you came home with
yeah,
some
we came
money in
home
the
with
bank?
money. Yeah. Oh yeah, we paid off my car while I was over there. And like money was just put in an account for you, and you only drew on it when you really needed it. You just go to the pay office and just sign out some money if you needed it. Biggest would have been if we're buying stuff and things like that, but really you never really had that much cash on you anyway, and you just get what you needed from week to week.
And you had some sort of your own form of army money?
Yeah, we had military payments, the currency, which you could buy and sell on the black market and that as well. But that was the form of currency that you used there, and at the PXs and stuff like that. So your Australian money wasn't any good here really. American dollars were, and they still are. You seem to talk the language all around the world, but they were few and far between. But most of the stuff, you'd buy in NPC, and you could trade it on the black market as well. Sometimes get a better exchange rate for it on the black market. But you had to be a bit careful; you didn't get shortchanged with changing money. It seems to happen all around the world.
Did you spend much money while you were there, or were you pretty frugal?
Oh, no, I don't think I was frugal with it. We bought stuff as we needed it. You buy all the latest hi-fi gear and video cameras. Not video cameras, but Super 8 cameras back those days. Everyone had a camera. And all the still cameras. Polaroids were all the go. Polaroid cameras.
You took a lot of footage yourself, didn't you? With
Yeah,
your,
we took
your
it.
Super
Yeah,
8?
we've got a lot of footage, Super 8 footage now. Probably around 40 rolls or something like that.
And where would you take your Super 8?
Oh, just when we're out, if we're out in operations with it, usually run footage while you're just driving around. From helicopters, if we're out flying a bit in choppers, you take it with you then. You usually tend to take your camera and everything everywhere you went. That was part and parcel.
So you'd be have your head sticking out of the Hummer carrier?
On the carrier, just you'd drive along and just shoot it down the road. We did a bit out of helicopters with different guys, so they're flying you somewhere. They like to show off, so they let you get some good footage with it. Everyone had a camera.
Did you actually take footage of people, of one of landmines going off, or
No.
the bang bang kind of stuff?
No.
Or I
No,
guess
never.
you're on
Never did.
working
No,
then.
I've got nothing of that. I've got footage of carriers that have been blown up after they've been blown up, but nothing happening at the time. The only footage I've got of any action is when we're doing tests, like demonstrating firepower to different guys and stuff like that. What happens and what can happen at the time, and it's just the only time we've taken footage of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And your nights out, did you used to take a camera with you, or video camera?
No, at the Boozer I've had my camera. I had it over there one time, and one of the nights out, and there's some good footage of guys there running amok. But no, not really. And a bit while we're in Hong Kong and leaders. Took a bit while we were there, just roaming around over there, which come out okay. But other than that, no, not really. As far as action stuff, probably never. I don't know. We never took time. I don't know.
Did you get any footage of the locals while you were over there?
Yeah, quite a bit. As you're driving down the road, you'd run movie footage of them with them, or around the villages sometimes. You'd just take movies of kids and stand around. A lot of times they put their hand out wanting to pay for posing for them for money.
Would you have to be careful that they perhaps might think that you had a gun in your hand when you had that camera holding it?
Yeah, not too bad in around the Dat. We had a couple of little villages close to us. It wasn't too bad around there and that, but we never had that mistake with it really.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship with the Vietnamese children.
Yeah, kids, well, they always came around, they were always chasing like food off you. And some of the villages that we used to go to, it was fine, you knew it was a friendly village, stuff
Do you
like
remember
that.
the names of those?
The kids and that? No.
No, the villages.
Oh, the villages.
The friendly villages.
Yeah, there's one, Mock was one that we did a bit of work at actually. I went up there quite a while. The Americans were in there and they put a generator in for the village lighting system. And not long before I come home, the generator blew up and they wanted someone to go out there and repair it and do work on it. And I was the silly guy that volunteered to go and do that. So I reckon I had the experience. So anyway, they flew us out there, and I spent some, matter of a couple of weeks back and forwards, repaired this thing. Wouldn't stay out there, but overnight we used to fly back and forwards all the time with us. And when we did get it fixed, they put on a big celebration and stuff like that. It was pretty good actually. Yeah. But it was just another Australian PR job, get it fixed, and no matter what the cost is, stuff like that. Yeah. So it would have been an expensive little exercise actually.
What do you mean Australian PR job? You mean?
Well, for the, like we're doing things for the people. Got their lights back working in the town and all this sort of stuff, and we've fixed their generator for them. So yeah, it was. Actually, the Australian government, well, not the government, but the army went out of its way pretty well to make sure it was done. Yes, it's not cheap to have someone fly back and forwards in helicopters, just to be working on a generator out there.
Is that what the soldiers used to call little jobs like that, the PR jobs?
Yeah, yep, yeah. And there's some of the orphanages and that there. They did a lot of reconstruction work on them. Just and a lot of the little schools around the place. You try and help out there where you could with it. But yeah, a lot of PR with the villages. There's some little another one, Dat Day near the Horseshoe. It was it was reasonably friendly little village as well. Really, wasn't too bad. But some of the other little ones, you had to watch what you're doing all the time.
With the children?
With the kids or with people in general through them. You're always very careful and very sceptical of, because you hear stories of what happens, so you always watch what you're doing.
Did you have any face-to-face
contact
with the children, like where you had to maybe be careful?
No, we didn't have any dramas and that with them, but you've always just been a bit careful with them, that's all.
Did they try and sell you?
Yeah, always try and sell stuff or buy stuff off you, or have you got any food or rations or anything like that, chocolate bars and stuff like that. So, nearly always chasing for that. It was just kids in general, all over.
You said you went to a feast after you'd a party. With
they put on a bit of a party for us, for the guys and that were out there, and a few of the blokes. Had some Americans there as well. And, they just put on a bit of a spread and appreciation, I suppose, for what was happening.
So did you eat some local food?
Oh yeah. You always try the local food. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Yeah.
Was there dancing and?
No, just all sitting around and just having beer and the local brew and food more. Yeah, just more like just a dinner with it more than anything. There was no dancing and all that. No. And we took off out of there before it got dark as well. They might have carried on in the night, but we wouldn't stay there after dark.
So you got in a chopper?
Yeah, flew out. Yeah, yeah.
Did you feel good doing that kind of work, or
it was
a bit cynical about it?
No, it was quite good to do, really. Yeah, no, it was all right. Just another job, but the only thing I didn't like doing it was I was on short time. I wasn't that much too long about going home, and it's in a place where anything could have happened there. It wasn't that friendly of a over friendly place, and we've had problems there before. But it worked out all right. So that was my only cynical thing about it, really. But just didn't like to be in that situation. But we were there anyway, and that's why we wouldn't stay there overnight. To fly us back out.
Did you have any face-to-face contact with what you knew were Viet Cong?
Not really, no. Only a couple of night ambushes that went off, and even then, you're not sure what set it off or what went off. You see tracks or shoes or whatever else, if they've taken off, but no real, straight on bang bang. There's someone there. No, none of that. And we did quite a bit of operations as well, but yeah.
Any dead Viet Cong? Did you come across?
No, none at all. So, with it, the infantry guys. That's they'd do a lot of that before we'd get there.
You lost one of your friends, didn't you? One of your friends was killed while you were there?
Oh, no, one of the troopers were killed while we were there, yeah. We knew the guy, yeah.
And you knew him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, well, you get to know him anyway through working on their carriers and stuff like that, yeah. Yeah, and it's pretty hard, losing blokes like that, especially accidentally.
Oh, you're talking about the one in the chopper. Yeah. Was there anyone lost in action, killed in action?
Not while I was there, no.
Right, okay.
No. Yeah, we're just in that period where it's relatively quiet, really, as far as that goes. Plenty, lots of things happening, but no one actually getting killed. A few wounded in it, but no one got, which is very fortunate. But it said the whole unit, and all the time I was there, I only lost 13 all up. So, which is not a bad percentage, really, considering the amount of blokes that went through the unit.
Which would have been about how many?
Oh, there'd be 200 there while I was there. So they changed them from when they were there from, I think the unit were in country about maybe 66, some of them. Somewhere around there. The first ones, through till end of 70, nearly the end of 71 they pulled out in there, I think. Something like that. So it's not too bad as it goes anyway.
Was there any talk about communism, or the fact that you were stopping the communists, trying to stop the communists from coming down?
Well, that's what it was all about to start with. Yeah.
Did you talk about that?
Not really, and probably not till you got home that and years on that it really till you read a bit more or followed up. I really can't say we sat down and one-on-one chatted. Oh, this is what we're doing here. We're stopping these guys. I can't recall any time at all sitting around and over beer saying, geez, we're not winning here, or we're not, we're losing this show. It was never ever. It's quite funny. I don't think it's ever mentioned till we've come home, and majority of the guys that we knock around with now, nearly what a waste of time. Except, geez, we had a lot of fun with mates. That seems to be, to me, with a group of guys I knock about with, seems to be what comes out of it.
While you were there, did you, what was it that kind of inspired you or kept, to be there? In like, you might talk to some guys and it was like nationalism, we're fighting for Australia, and that's kind of keeps you going. What kept you going while you were there?
I don't think any of that. I think just the mates who are there and the work side of it, and it's pretty exciting as far as that goes. And work, what we're doing. There's probably never too many dull moments with it as far as even just guys go. Just the characters that make up your unit and people that are there. There's always someone that's causing a problem to make you laugh. There's always a clown. No matter where you go, there's always someone there that does that. And as far as being nationalistic, I don't think we're not like the Americans in that way, that we're there full on gung ho. To me, I don't think we're tarred that way. We're just out there doing a job, and that's probably the basic thing of it. Doing what the government asks you to do. We're right, wrong, or indifferent. And back then, they never questioned why. Why are you doing it? And probably now, but you can question it and say, well, why in the hell were we there? For what's come of it? And my own way at the moment is saying, even though we'll digress off it, like what's happening in Iraq, it's been a good thing they've stopped one, but then again they've just opened up an ant's nest, to me, of problems, which is just going to keep happening and happening and happening. And although I suppose in Australia you do feel a bit isolated from it, but still, to me it's just a scenario like, the Yanks went into Vietnam and gained nothing, and the same thing over there now. They're fighting hard to try and gain for people, which even when they self-govern, it's probably going to go back to, depends on who gets in there, or similar things. Don't know, I might not quite politically that way, but standing back looking, be interesting. In 10 years' time to see where it is. Or even like now, we're 30 years down the track. Just, it's just back. Vietnam is a stable country. Communism is no close to Australia, really. They're staying where they are, not doing anything. They might, it'll be interesting.
I guess you see a lot of parallels to Vietnam and Iraq, having been in Vietnam.
Yeah, well, they probably aren't, but to me they are. It's when you're seeing, like, we're supposed to stop fighting there, and still seeing the loss of life through smart guerrilla warfare, in which these people, like they did in Vietnam, you know, like the small groups were disturbing, you know, some of the biggest armies in the world. Just small groups of people were causing havoc all the time and just being a nuisance factor in the situation. And that's what's happening, like in Iraq. Small groups of people are just going to keep being a nuisance and causing that problem. You know, it's only 1 or 2 people that they're knocking off at a time, but that 1 or 2 people ties up like 50 people at a time. And it just keeps tying up people all the time. You know, they're not killing you very many, but it'll just keep doing it, and eventually it just harasses people. Yeah, and that's, you know, that's how terrorist cells, and like even Vietnam, that's how it was worked. They just small groups in cells all over the place. Just, you know, you might only just blow up 1 tank or personnel carrier or wound, say, 1 soldier, and away they go. But they spend the entire force then trying to find 1 man or 2 men, and away they go again. And they move quicker, faster. You know, and they're fighting just their belief, and that's what it is. And same at, like in Iraq, just their belief with it. And, you know, that's just my view on it.
Did you have with the, you know, you mentioned that when you in training you had you had a fair idea that the Viet Cong had underground tunnels, and
yeah.
you were learning about those in training. Did that translate in when you were in Vietnam? Were you coming across those tunnels?
We only ever went or looked at one tunnel complex and didn't go down in it because it's not our job. You know, that they have what they call sappers, which are mine engineers, and they go down and sweep that and do all that sort of stuff. But their engineering feats are something unbelievable. For someone that's digging with their bare hands and a bit of bamboo stake and things like that, it's just what man can do if he really wants to. Yeah, and some of that stuff was quite unbelievable. That they actually, you know, some of the tunnels they dug and seeing some of the stuff now, even now, you know, you probably got to take your hat off to them a little bit.
At the time, when you were over there, did you have any idea how extensive that tunnel network was?
Not really, no. No, yeah, we'd seen stuff of it, you know, like at Cronulla and different lectures you go to and stuff like that. But till you see it, yeah, it changes your attitude. That they've, you know, give them a bit more respect with it, and also the way they used to do it. As I was saying earlier, you know, they'd blow up one of our carriers, and we might have used the road a dozen times and thought it was safe. And next minute, bang, lose the carrier on it, you know, because there's been no fresh marks, but it's just been. They've set put a detonator in it and away it's gone. It could have been there for ages. A bit of that stuff, and same with, you know, they blew up a tank carrier, you know, tank minesweeper, just blink of an eye, without even, you know, just right in front of everyone pretty well.
So you have a respect for Viet Cong as fighters?
Well, in what they were doing, yeah. You know, taking a lot of people and so few men, just and you know, you believe in something, I suppose, you fight hard for it.
How did you actually come to terms with the concept of killing, being over there and you know, killing? Was that something that you had to deal with?
Well, we didn't kill anyone, and
that we
knew of, yeah. And that's probably, and also, yeah, a lot of times when you had an ambush situation go off, you're just firing blind into the scrub level. You know, it's not like the guys in the Second World War where they could watch a guy running towards them and pull the trigger and actually shoot him. But in saying that, your training in the army, it gets instilled in you. It's either you or him. You don't have time to put it in your brain and think, is this the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do? You know, they get you. You are that way that you have to react instinctively. For preservation of your own life, and I think that's where, you know, just in my opinion, I think most blokes would be the same. You even now in civilian life, you'd probably do the same thing. If it was to protect your own life, you would do something and sort it out. Yeah, but as far as lining someone up, you wouldn't know.
So you mentioned it before that there was a few operations you went on that were less than perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about one of those?
We had we're doing a lot of work along what they call Songroy River, and we had some carriers up there, and the boys decided to ford the Songroy River, which was, these carriers will actually swim. And you can put them across it, and you put the loading board down and drive them down in the creek, into the rivers, and you can actually just, they will go across without any worry. Well, anyway, the boys got a bit enthusiastic with the carrier, and next minute it's gone underwater, and we've got all we can see, and I've got photos of it, the two aerials sticking up out of the Songroy River. You know, it's halfway across the thing, it's gone under, and of all things, it was one of the crew commander's vehicles and that, and he's on the top of it, swimming around it. Anyway, so we had a rescue operation there in which to get it out. And while we're there then, because we'd blown every bit of cover that we had, because everyone was around the place, we started popping hand grenades into it and blowing the fish up in it and getting fish off, so we had fish dinners, and then got smart and putting landmines in it and let them settle, and little things like that, just blow them up, and away they go. And New Year's Eve over there, and Christmas, they went around and told us not to, you know, you weren't allowed to let off flares. You know, everyone's, you know, we know that you've got, you know, 30 flares on your carrier. We'll be around in the morning to check that there's 30 flares there, and, you know, boxes of the flares, but everybody was stacking up flares from months previously. So, and when New Year's Eve was come, it was just like daylight around the area. You just flares going up, you know, from miles up the road. You could see the camps up there, flares going up, and all around Newey, there's just flares popping all over the place, and we were pretty right next day when the head count came. It was just, yeah, it was just a funny situation with it. Just little things with it, but yeah, in operations part of it, we also you know, used to get a ride. You know, just say you'd get a ride in the helicopters. You know, if they're doing a SAS drop or something like that, and you know, why in the hell you'd bother to do things like this, I don't know to this day. It's just a bit of fun, a bit of excitement. And so you'd jump out with them, and they'd probably take 5 helicopters and a half dozen SAS guys, and they'd fly along and keep dropping out of the sky and up and down all the time. And then sometimes they'd just hit the ground, and the blokes would jump out and away they go, and then they'd keep doing it that way. The Viet Cong wouldn't know where they actually got out at, and they'd just keep popping out of the sky like that. And that was good. You'd fly around with them, and then they'd go up later on. You'd get to pick them up into a clearing, or they'd walk back, or you'd have to go in. You know, we'd go up in the carriers sometimes. We'd pick them back up, and they'd.
What kind of state were they in when you picked them up after being
All
in
right,
the jungle?
just filthy dirty, the same as normal. Yeah, they'd have 3 weeks or 4 weeks out there. Just you wouldn't know where they were. You really got to admire them for what they do. Yeah.
Would they be mixing with the locals much, or would they just
No,
be hanging about?
they're just hanging about by themselves. They just cruise around the scrub and watch roads and watch villages. You know, just to get a feel for what's happening around the area, whether that area is worth doing an ambush on. Try and pick up something. Just watch movements. You know, how many people are moving here and there or whatever with it. Yeah, just poke about with it. Yeah, you know, live it by themselves and on their own. Just live off the land pretty well. Not carry much kit with them when you drop them off. So yeah, no, they were interesting, and even the chopper guys were good to knock about with, and yeah, you get a fly with them.
Did many of the Aussies try and pull rank over in Nui Dat?
No, you had a bit of respect for rank, I suppose, or a little bit of respect for like senior guys. You know, even with our stuff, you know, blokes had been there a bit longer than you. You know, even though you might outrank them, sometimes you still take notice of what they say. We didn't have too many dramas with our lot in that way, and I think even our officers that we did have. You know, even this Captain Tunbridge I know very well, even now, just one of the boys. You know, pretty easy to get along with, and appreciate what you're doing. And I think that was pretty good. It was good to see, like some of the regular soldiers that had a bit of rank still, yeah, got on well with you as far as that went, as far as having, you know, like Nasho's work from, as they used to call us all the time, and with it. But yeah, but you still needed a bit of respect from guys, but it wasn't, you know, you didn't have to bash people to get them to do things for you. Most of the time, blokes would jump in and away they go.
Is there still rivalry between the Nashos and the regulars?
Yeah, it was still there a bit, you know, but you're still, yeah, like with our guys, they all got on pretty well, but still you'd always have a bit of a dig, you know, just as you do. Just couldn't resist the temptation to do that.
Are the Nashos better soldiers as a rule?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. They made good soldiers, for sure. Yeah, a lot of the show guys. I think a lot of them are probably, a bit more mature. They're all in saying that, like 20s, where a lot of the rigs were in at 18, things like that. So, they had a few more years on them. A lot of them were, in their trades, a lot of guys. And being that bit older, I think, it's probably made a bit of difference to a lot of guys with it, if you can be a bit more mature at 20 and 21. Where a lot of the rigs, probably in there at 18, or, like joined early in their life, and they might have had a bit more experience, but mature into it might have been a different story. I don't know, it's a bit hard to say, really.
But even so, from what you were saying, even the Nashos that were there, they all had to sign a piece of paper to say that they'd go. So most of them wanted to be there, or
most guys.
They weren't. None of them
were
forced.
forced. No, none of all in our unit and stuff like that. And that's the understanding I have, that you had to be signed to go. They're not sure on the infantry side of things, but I think it's still pretty true that had to sign to volunteer to actually be over there. And all our guys, they wanted, did want to be over there, and that's what the working there to do it. And I think it's just a lot of guys, just a different place to work for 12 months. Have a bit of fun.
You had some fun you mentioned on Sundays
Oh,
at Nui Dad.
Well, Sundays, used to, you could either, on some Sundays there, you could drive around Nui Dad, and I did a video on a bit of it just one Sunday afternoon. There was a gun club there. You could actually go and shoot shotguns at the Nui Dad Gun Club. You could go there for that. There's go-kart racing on there with guys from one of the engineering places had a 7A construction had built a go-kart track. So all these sort of handmade, homemade conglomerations or whatever you could get there and drive for that. You could go to it. We had a spot down the big dam there. We used to take our carriers down and wash the carriers down there. So there's always a bit of mucking around down in that area. Or you just go, one of the music things at Lusk and Bowl, or just sit about and play cards with the guys. But there was Yanks playing a bit of baseball. You could join in with them, and always touch football or volleyball was a big thing. Into volleyball if you're real keen. So you always had something to do. And then in the wet season, we used to have this little vehicle called the Mule. It was a 4-wheel vehicle and just had a flat tray on it, a steering wheel and seat. And for the sporting thing was you'd get a bloke to stand on the back of it, and you'd hoon around on our big cement pad out the front or around the track and see if you could throw him off, and take turns of doing that.
Did you manage?
Oh yeah, he'd do it. How he didn't kill anyone, I don't know, but tip it over and throw everyone off and stuff like that. It never seemed to, I don't know, you must have been invincible back then. Never seemed to hurt anyone with it.
Did you have any kind of injuries when you were there at all?
I've got just a gun blast in my left ear and a bit of deafness in it. That's all. But, yeah.
How did that happen?
Accidentally, actually. Firing pistols, just practice firing. Because you do a bit of weapon practice every now and again, and just being a bit careless and standing alongside the carrier, and the muzzle blast echoed off the carrier into my eardrum. Just careless.
And so what happened? Your eardrum burst, or?
Yeah. I've lost just a constant ring in my ears and tinea still, and lost a bit of hearing on the ears and that. Yeah, and also what I do for a living as well. Sort of, it's not helping much.
Did that drive you mad?
You just live with it. Yeah, you don't really notice till someone mentions it, and then you hear it now. Like now, it's 4 times as loud as what it should be, and it doesn't help. Probably like. Being my truck last night, I tend to put earplugs in it and slows it down a bit, like just get rid of that constant noise a bit. Takes a couple of days, yeah. But a lot of guys have got it. Just around any loud noise at all, where, you've been near guns that have been firing constantly, and artillery guys probably suffer from it. Yeah.
You mentioned you had a great night out in Saigon. Can you tell us about that particular, or it was a couple of days?
No, we just had a day off with some of the local boys from here, Steve Doyle and Michael White, and Mick I'd played footy with, as a kid, and sort of grew up here, and he, got drafted in the same time, and they were both in 7 Construction Squadron, and we just got together one time, and Steve had to go to Saigon to pick up some gear for one of the jobs, so we all, got organised and went up together, and just had a day out up there, just walking around and looking at things, and went to one of the big flash buildings there. I got some photos of them up on the roof. One of the headquarters, I think, Army headquarters.
What was your impression of Saigon?
Huh?
What at that time? What was Saigon?
Oh, pretty rough looking place. Yeah, a lot of military traffic everywhere, and people still tearing around all the place, but heaps of military everywhere, just all Americans. Pretty dirty and disheveled, as far as that goes, from what we can remember. Even the harbour and stuff like that, just in around there, just rubbish and stuff in it. And all the way up it, you can see just where it's been bombed out, all up the highway, things like that, and Highway 1. Just all the bomb craters everywhere with it.
A lot of girly bars and
a lot of
all
girly
that.
bars there. Yeah, no, hell of that. Yeah, all in chasing the American tourist dollar with American soldiers up there, because they had a pretty big presence in Saigon with it. The Australians were up there as well, but not as big. Vung Tau was mainly the headquarters for Australian troops and that, down that way.
And you had a pretty interesting journey home.
On the plane, we actually, once we got up in the air and were flying, the captain announced we're on the oldest plane that Qantas had, the oldest 707 back then that they had in the whole fleet, which was a bit interesting. But the boys, we were all sort of drinking pretty heavily, because it was, that was it. We were finished and we were on our way home. We drank the plane out of beer and booze, so most of us were carrying spirits to bring home and stuff like that. So we ended up selling the spirits back to the hosties on the plane, the stewards and stuff like that, then buying it back off them at twice the rate of money. But it was quite good. We landed at Darwin on the way back. Plane first touched down there. We weren't off the plane, only, I'm not sure what they did there. I think they just fumigated the plane and might have let guys off. I just can't really remember. But it was pretty good. And flew from there into Sydney, and the same thing as soon as I hit the ground. Everyone was pretty relieved to be home. I came, my mum come down, my sisters and her husband, and a couple of mates of mine met us at the airport, and they, bottled beer was a bit of, you couldn't get it over in Vietnam, so they bought some beer out, and we sat around the car park for a while and had a few drinks, and decided I was supposed to go to Coogee and stay with the boys over there, and we headed across there and got over there, and by then it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning, so then decided I didn't really want to stay there, so we hopped in the car and drove straight back to Convoy, come home. Got home, time to shower, change, and meet the 10 o'clock opener at the pub, and that was pretty well welcome home.
Everyone was at the pub in the morning?
Yeah, there's people down there, a bit of a blur from them, but it was good. Some of the other guys reckon that they didn't have much of a homecoming, but I was treated pretty good, actually. I didn't have too many dramas, but just, I suppose been known in the community well and truly beforehand, stuff like that, and not having the city influence with a little local town, and all they are is, just someone's been away and come back, and you had all your Second World War guys that were pretty keen to see you back. It was good.
So there was lots of slaps on the back when you got
plenty
to
of
the
that.
pub?
Plenty of slaps and plenty of drinks, had by all with it. And I had a bit of leave. Then had to go back to Sydney, because while I was over there, they asked you what posting you want, like when you come back. If you want to be posted, we could get posted pretty close to home if you wanted to, or they try to post you somewhere. It depends on how much time you got to have and with it. But we elected to get posted back to my old unit in Sydney, which which I normally wouldn't do, but under the circumstance I said, well, better off going back there, and we can go back, start training guys again, go back to teaching and stuff like that. So we did that. They sent us back there.
So when the time came to leave Vietnam, Michael, you were well and truly ready to get out of there?
Yeah, we'd been there 6 days longer than we should have. My orders my replacement came into the country, and usually your orders to fly out come in as well at the same time. And most of the time you only do 365 days and you're going. And anyway, my orders to fly out didn't turn up. So I couldn't fly home. I was sort of sat there another week before the orders came through again for us to fly out.
Was that a tough week?
Yeah, it was actually. It was a bit rugged. Especially, you knew you should be home and things like that. That's probably the longest week I've had for a long time. We didn't do any work. We didn't do anything. Just didn't go anywhere. Just eat and just go over there. Didn't do any work for anyone or anything like that. Just really just tried to keep well and truly out of trouble with it. But no, then we had the big night send off, as we always do on the Tuesday that night. And the Wednesday morning you're up early and on a plane from Luscombe back up to Saigon again. And there's a few other blokes going back with you, from different units, and you just get up there and there's a whole plane load of guys going back.
Full plane?
Full plane, yeah, flying them out of there. Just all changing over and back into Australia.
So you got back into Sydney to Holsworthy?
No, you actually land in Sydney and you're free to go home.
But when you
eventually
had to go back?
Yeah, when we eventually came back, we were actually posting back to B Squadron 3rd Cav Regiment back in Holsworthy. That's where we were originally. We had a posting back to there, which I knew the CO that he'd been posted back there. A lot of the guys. So and our plan was, and what we did do was, just the new mechanics that were coming through there. Then, just teach them, a few of the methods we use overseas, what to expect while they're over there, and practically did that. Just became an instructor in the situation and just help guys to understand a bit more. Not that too many more went across really, but because the unit was getting close to pulling out that stage of the game. But I'd spent a pretty easy last probably a month in the army. Actually didn't do much at all, except instruct and come home here. And I used to come back here a lot of weekends, or just go skiing down in the Hawkesbury there, down there, have weekends away from the base, and a few extra days. It was pretty cushy.
Did it take long to sort of settle down from being in the intensity of Vietnam?
No, well, not that I recall. I think I was, pretty well back at work again, after, probably only a month off, if that, month's holiday. I don't think we recall going anywhere or doing anything. I didn't think I really wanted to go anywhere, but, looking back in life now, possibly you should have went overseas for a while, while we had money. Just looking at it, never did that, jumped away and travelled. Come back home and started just going out and back skiing, different things, and full into work. They moved me. I had to actually work in Convoy for a little while. Then they had the pressure on us, so I had to move to Parks actually and worked up there. Started work up in Parks for the county council there.
Did you consider staying on with the army?
Yeah, I did. I gave it some pretty good thought actually, mainly because some of the fellas that I knew in there were a bit keen for us to stay on, and when you look back at it now, maybe it could have been a reasonable sort of career there really, because we're pretty well respected in it amongst our unit and our peers as far as that went, and we'd already been teaching at Bandiana and back at Holsworth again, so to fit into an instructor's role somewhere, it would have been pretty easy for us to stay on. But I think just the mentality at the time that you have is, you're only in there as an ASHO and 2 years are up, well, might as well get back out and back to the real world again. And so we did, and I think a few guys did stay on with it, but early retirement if you had it.
You said that you had a pretty good welcome back home here, and that you sort of managed to slip back into civilian life quite smoothly. When you started to see that some of the blokes in Sydney and the bigger cities started to get not such a good welcome home, how did you feel about that?
Well, it wasn't till really the welcome home parade that that we actually probably all got together in Sydney, and it wasn't until you talked to guys then that realised that some blokes didn't have as good as what I had. I just walked back into a town that knew us, and any guy that came here was the same. You'd go to the RSL club and you were shouted a beer. You were made very welcome because the club supported you 100% while you're overseas, and even the older guys and stuff like that really give you 100% support. And really didn't even realise, like naive to the papers, I don't know what it was, but until I started to talk to some of my mates that, they didn't have as good. And some of them really, health-wise, weren't probably travelling as good either. They were pretty knocked around by the experience and that of it. We had one guy actually, Mark Brown, committed suicide, which is just unbelievable. Just no rhyme nor reason for it. Not long after he got home. And then one of my best mates here, he shot himself, same thing, young Jeff. Just no reason. And it's all, they say that's what it's from, but I don't know, But myself, as far as I know, I've got nothing wrong with me. But you have your moments, and I probably, I'm probably more emotionally now. I think to myself, and this is what the explanation I've been given as to why, it's probably fitted in pretty good. I came home and met a girl pretty well straight away, and got into a relationship and stuck with that, and didn't, all the good things just were the good things, and all the bad things were put to one side and just shoved there and left there, and never had to worry about opening that box up. And that's the theory I've been given in the game, till the traumatic thing, we got divorced, and that blew us apart badly. Really knocked me around. And since then, even I've been probably a little bit more emotional than what I would normally get from most things. I think that's just the part of you that's you've let down all those walls, and this is the explanation you get, that all the bad things that happen to you, you've always suppressed them, and then they come to the top and explode up in one big hit. And I think that's where some guys probably haven't coped as good as well with it. And also I probably keep myself busy in what I should do as well. So you're flat out doing things, and I think that's some way of guys actually compensate or cope for what it is. We're always doing something, we're always on the run, going somewhere, because that's the way I probably like my life.
When you did catch up with those blokes,
did
you talk about, did post-traumatic stress syndrome come up?
No, not really.
Was that something they bandied about?
No, we're all, pretty well all of us were still together with our wives at the first one we went to, and the remark was, we all went sort of to the march. Then after the march we said we'd meet up and take them all to dinner, and they all went, ha ha ha, you just won't do that. And we all turned up and took all our wives out for dinner, and they reckon we all must have matured a bit. But nothing came up about it then. It was only the fun things we did and stuff like that. There was no, I'm having this sort of problem and stuff like that. And it's probably only for me, and even now, in the last 5 years, where some of the blokes that I spoke to, I can't believe the tablets and the problems they've got, and just go, shit, I'm only on blood pressure tablets. Must be something wrong with me. I don't know. But like our storeman, he's on that much medication, it's not even funny. And I'm going, well, you didn't go anywhere, but you were just handling parts all day. I suppose it just affects guys differently to other blokes. And I think that's and that seems to be the bit of the trend with, and I've even seen, like some infantry guys here in town, which I would say we've seen probably spend a lot more time in the bush than that they have had, while we're in country over there. And they're affected badly by it. And I'm not saying that I'm not affected by it either, but still probably suppressing it better or handling it better. I don't know. There's got to be a reason somewhere along the line for it.
How do you think you are affected by it?
Part of your life that, in some ways, you look at it and think, okay, I wasted 12 months or 2 years of it, and you've got to draw that fine line in saying, well, I didn't really waste it. I got a lot of experience out of it, met a lot of great guys, and you've got to put it in that perspective. Even though when you look back and say, okay, well, we virtually lost what you were doing, what we're over there for, the politics away from it, I think that's why you've got to look at it. I gained this much out of it. And it probably outweighs the the bad bits that you got. You know, all the good things that, you know, all the friends you met and all the good things and things you've done. You know, the opportunities to do stuff. You know, people just met around the world. The contacts you got and things like that. I think it outweighs a lot of it by a long shot. Yeah, that's just for me. It probably got us a little bit more, I wouldn't say maybe sense of adventure out of it, because that's probably what it was all about to start with. You know, just someone at 20 and there's a chance to get out of the country and away you go. I regret I never ran with it when I come home. Sort of took off and do what kids do now. You know, like the boys next door to us. You know, in their 20s, they're off tripping around Europe and stuff like that. We email them all the time, and yeah, and I always say to them in the emails, I wish I'd done it 20 years ago. You haven't, you know, it's fun, and I think all young kids should, you know, like do something like it if you could afford to do it, or even if you can't afford to do it, get yourself out of the country anyway. You'll survive once you get away, and have a look around the world. The world's a big place. You know, even Australia, you know, get out of your own town, go have a look around other places. You know, it's good fun. You know, get to meet more people outside your, you know, your comfortable circle. You know, and what you knock around with. Yeah, it is. It's just a big place. The more you can get of it, the better.
How do you think your experience in the war changed you as a person?
I don't know, people still think I'm, you know, or guys I've known before and after, I reckon they're still the same sort of bloke. Hasn't, you know, like, probably taught us to be maybe a bit more self-sufficient, know what it's like to be, you know, independent, make your own decisions to do stuff. Wouldn't say it's made me a better business manager out of anything like that, but so I'd probably run my business for the fun of it half the time when you do your tax records and stuff like that. But yeah, it probably matured us a hell of a lot, I suppose, as a, you know, like a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, compared to say like a 21-year-old these days. Yeah, and in saying that, compare myself to my son, who's, you know, now 22. At his age, you know, where he is now and where I was now, you know, he's travelled quite a bit of the world, quite a bit of Australia and that as well. You know, yeah, had some pretty good opportunities. Yeah, I wouldn't have liked, in my position now, I wouldn't like to see if they say a conscript to go to Iraq. Yeah, I wouldn't like to see him do it. And it's interesting talking to him about things like, because I put him on the spot. I said, what would happen? He said, just go. Yeah, would you object against it? Yeah, no. And talking to the boys next door, you know, in a beer situation when we've been sitting around having a few drinks, and you know, they try and get a bit of info out and stuff like that, and they'd say to them, you know, like, you're 20, Dan, what do you reckon? You know, how do you think you'd go? Would you or would you not? And they all play rugby and stuff like that, and yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, we'll go. We'll do it. You know, it's, the country wants us to do something, we'll do it with it. So, you know, it's interesting to see, just in a situation, what would actually happen. Not that I'd wish it on anyone, as far as conscript goes and stuff like that, but it's nice to have that there's still young blokes there that would like, you know, would step up, even though they know the consequences still of what's happening around the world. But,
how do you feel about national service these days?
Yeah, in some ways I think it would do a lot of kids the world of good. It would teach a bit of discipline to some kids that really need a swift kick up the backside. And that's probably, I don't know, I might be old-fashioned, I don't know, but I think I'm still someone that likes, you know, to see the car door held open and stuff like this. You know, just a little bit of courtesy shown towards the opposite sex is really good. And I think that's a bit of a problem. I think guys, you know, really need to take a good look at it, young blokes anyway. Just it's probably changing values. You know, it's just life as it goes. But someone along the line, and I don't think it would hurt some fellas. It really wouldn't. To have to toe the line and get up at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning and be regimented about something for once in their life. But then again, other guys might rebel about it, might not like it. I don't know. Might be just a generation that's going to be different.
How do you feel about the fact that it took so long for your first march to come along? And also after the Vietnam vets had just been treated so badly for so long.
It wasn't a good thing. Like the government, in hindsight, we'll never know why they didn't. There was some parades held for guys that, like some of the battalions when they came home, they actually marched as a unit in different places, where guys like myself that really was a pretty well transit unit, where we all flew home at all different stages of the game. I suppose it was really hard to get us all together to march us down the street to get that recognition. Where some of the battalions did, like I think up in Queensland, stuff like that, they actually marked, they came home on the ship, they all unloaded off the ship and they marched down the street and probably got a bit of recognition, stuff like that. But yeah, for us guys, no, and maybe it should have been something that could have been done a lot sooner with it, to just give you that recognition. Although, in saying that as well, I've marched here pretty well every Anzac Day I've been home. And if I haven't been home, I've marched in Melbourne or somewhere, or tried to go into a service somewhere that we've been. I suppose that's, you get recognised for that. That's probably some way of doing it. But in saying that, even the Second World War guys, a lot of those didn't get any recognition. They just, they did march through the streets and stuff like that, but there would be a lot of blokes that were independently, just came in and hopped on a train and came back to home, where it was. I think that's some of the ways where the government possibly went wrong was, like we'd land in an aeroplane, like 10 hours ago, you could have been in the jungle. Some guys were literally still there, had a shower, changed, jumped on the plane and were gone. At least we'd had a little bit of time to wind down. We'd ceased pretty well trying to do operations outside of Newey Dat in the last 2 weeks. Like, hey, and this is what we do with most of our guys, that, okay, you're going home, we'll keep you, cotton wool you. We don't want you getting bumped off or something stupid happening to you, like a roller vehicle or something like that. We'll cotton wool you, try and keep you in around the Dat, doing stuff around here for the last 2 weeks of your time in country. You deserve that much. And so you probably got into a little bit of a wind down mode before you got on the plane to come home, really. Where some guys didn't know, it was just straight out of the unit and bang, shower, change, jump on the plane and you're out of there. And which, for blokes like that, it's pretty hard to take. You land in the airport, then you put in a cab or whatever and home, where, to me, maybe you should have been, not locked up for a bit, but debriefed or something like that, sent to Holsworthy or somewhere and back to the unit where normalise yourself a little bit, then be allowed back in. I don't know, there's a few different theories in it, I suppose, with it. But then again, it depends how good blokes do cope anyway, with the day-to-day situation.
So looking back at that war now, do you feel like Australia should have been there doing what we did?
You look back at it and say, okay, we did some good things for the people over there. Built some good roads and maybe did some good things for schools and villages and stuff like that. And if that's helping people, but as far as, trying to free them from what they were, did they want to get untangled from, history sort of has proven that, we're wasted our time as far as that part of it's gone. My own personal stuff, it probably has been a little bit of waste, of Australian life. But then again, at the time, the government of the day, they're just going on what they get told and what they're doing. And probably at the time and at the day, hindsight's a good thing. You can always look back at a lot of things and say we shouldn't have done this or shouldn't have done that. Just part of Australia's history. It's a bit like saying Gallipoli, they shouldn't have went there. When you look at a history. no way in the world should that beach been tried to remotely been anywhere near. So there's been a lot of mistakes made where Australians have been at war, even back to the Boer War, where they shot Breaker around. It should never happen. But that's just history again. You can always look back and say things are right or wrong with it, and you find that no matter what happens, still even today's soldiers still do what the government tells. You don't get paid to think. It's paid to do. You just do as you're told, and follow the orders from the next guy, and that's what makes probably a pretty good soldier. Do that, and you survive most of the time with it.
You've done some talks here and there in
Yeah.
different situations about your Vietnam experience.
Mm.
Can you tell us about those talks and what you try and get across when you do that?
Oh, Matt, I've spoken to the school kids, and it's quite. The first one I did was quite interesting, because when I did it, like I can remember old Len Craft coming to my school and giving a lecture, and he was a Second World War vet, and I can always remember him being there, talking about he's just been to the Second World War and stuff like that, and various guys over the years have come to me, while you're going to school, and as I said to the kids, little would I realise that, that I would eventually be, excuse me, that old guy standing up there giving a lecture. I was actually that soldier that would be doing it. Never even a million years would have thought that. And that was, pretty good. It was a good feeling. And I didn't spoke about my life as a recruit and being, how regimented it is, and if you think, like training for a sport is hard, it's nothing the way that the army teaches you. You think you run somewhere up a hill and you get to the top of the hill, it just starts going again, and you just keep progressing and progressing. And I just related it to life for them. If you don't strive to do something, you'll get nowhere. And just spoke about things like that, not so much from experiences overseas, but just what life in general did for me then, and to survive is the same thing. You really need to look at goals, set goals, achieve them, work out where you want to go with your life. And that's all, I pretty well spoke about that with it. Not the horrifics of war or anything like that. It's, there's not much point in that with it. And because, they can see it on TV these days with it. But, that's all I did. Just, there's some of the lighter, humorous sides of life in it. What it was really like, and, how much fun we did have, and, probably the times we didn't have it either, but still, but that was the main thing, was just try and point to an area that, no matter, you just keep striving to do your best all the time, whether you swim, run, or you're trying to do something for your country. You just push and do your best with it, and that's with pretty well the life all the way around. Just enjoy it.
Are there lessons that we can gain from the Vietnam War?
Well, you would think so. You would think, like the latest thing, and terrorism is a big thing now, and really probably the only thing that's affected us in Australia has actually been the Bali bombings, and one of the guys from there, I knew him, and you don't think, and that's probably made Australians gear up a little bit, and like to say, oh, okay, let's get into Iraq, that's where it's come from. I still, my own personal opinion is, I still don't think it is the right thing to do. I think it's always just going to be a hornet's nest, but I know terrorism's got to be stopped somewhere along the world. And no matter how good our borders are and stuff like that, it's going to happen. I think religious groups who are getting into Australia, we've got to have some sort of, not so much curb on it, but I think they've got to get a grip on it that this is a pretty safe country, and leave your politics overseas when you come in. And it'll always be a safe place. It'll always be a place that's pretty respected. But and it's still, I'm probably old-fashioned in that I still see that we are having problems with some of with those sort of groups, and we're still having problems with our local groups as well, but not to the stage where they want to shoot you and burn your houses down and petrol bomb each other and things like that. I think it's only a minor thing as far as that goes. But yeah, my personal opinion is I don't think we should be, a troop commitment to Iraq, and unfortunately we haven't lost any men over there, which is a good thing, because I'd hate to see guys get lost over there for which, it might be a legit reason, but and watching the young guys on TV and stuff like that, they're the same young blokes that, all those years ago.
How do you feel about the protest against the Vietnam War that occurred in Australia?
Well, surprisingly, they didn't affect us that much at all, because we didn't know much about it, even overseas. Like we didn't take any notice, just the symbols. And I've got one inside, and it's a great big one, this big, and it's got participant Southeast Asia War Games on it. It was just a joke thing. But yeah, I didn't have any problems with it. It wasn't. It was just one of those things that I suppose back then you didn't take any notice of, and even now I think it's just it's probably foolishness on some people's parts. I don't think it did anything to bring them back. Maybe it did. I don't know. Golf come to power, I suppose, at that time and shut it all down. But then again, it's probably run to the end of its tide anyway. It wasn't going to happen. They weren't getting the result, and all the money and the millions, and I think even the states were starting to feel the pressure from internally that, okay, well, let's get out of here. I think the Australians probably just got out just before them at the right time. As I said, like if you go back to history books, the French were in there for 50 years and didn't beat them. It cost them a lot. They've had quite a few people try and go through the place.
Have you got a message that perhaps we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to get across? Just a reflection on war or your experience? Anything that you'd like to get across at this point?
No, not really, but only probably being around to see like First World War vets. Like there was First World War vets here in Convoy. When I was first started to march and stuff like that. Then Second World War guys. Then Korea blokes and Vietnam blokes. Probably seen, being in that period of time where I've seen, most of the major wars that we've saw the results from it that we've actually fought in. It's no good for anyone. If we can avoid it, well and good, it'd be a good thing, but there's no such thing as a perfect society, and it'll never happen. We will be at some point of time always have a force that, either overseas or serving overseas, and if we do that, and with the government that we have of the day, no matter who it is, I think the Australian people, and that's all I look at it, if we're committed to something, support the guys 100%. And just give them the support as well, because there's nothing worse than being away doing something and knowing that you're not getting any thanks for it. Whether you think's right, wrong, or indifferent, and it's not the individual's fault. It's the government that's saying, okay, we are going to send you. You join the army to do a job, no matter where it is. Whether it's peacekeeping or just to fight a war, and it's the government asks you to do that, and that's your commitment. So you're over there doing that, and you just hope that back home that you do get the 100% support. And that's probably the disappointing thing for even the guys these days, that if they pick up a newspaper and we're not, it's not being thanked for at home. We shouldn't be doing this or shouldn't be doing that, and that's about all. That and life's very precious. Just treat it with the respect that it needs, and it's it is. There's a lot of kids that, a lot of people that die very young, and never get to see, or do after things in a lifetime. Not that I've done that, I wouldn't say that much of my life, but for a fair bit of it, I enjoyed it and right to the fullest. And that's, I think everybody should try and do that. Just enjoy life. Yeah, that's all.
Excellent, Michael.